During my vasectomy procedure, I overheard my surgeon talking to a nurse. "I need you to give his wife this envelope. Don't let him see it." My blood ran cold. I pretended to still be under anesthesia. When I saw what was inside the envelope, my heart stopped. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to watch your back around the people who are supposed to love you the most. My name is Isaiah Jeffries, but everyone in Chicago just calls me Ike. I am 72 years old. Most people look at me and see a tired old man walking with a cane wearing a faded sweater and assume I am living off a meager pension. They see the gray hair and the slow walk and they think I am weak. They are wrong. For 40 years, I ran the biggest construction crews in this city. I poured the concrete for the skyscrapers that define the skyline. I dealt with union strikes, mafia shakedowns, and corrupt politicians. I built a fortune of $40 million with my bare hands, and I learned one lesson very early on. Never show your full hand. Silence is power. But lying on that cold operating table with my legs exposed and humiliatingly positioned, I felt powerless. The air in the operating room smelled of antiseptic and cold steel. The bright lights above burned my eyes even though I tried to keep them closed. I was supposed to be sedated, a local anesthetic to numb the area and a mild sedative to keep me calm. That was the plan. But my body has always been resistant to drugs. Maybe it is the years of breathing in concrete dust, or maybe I am just too stubborn to be put under easily. I lay there drifting in and out of consciousness, feeling the tug and pull of the instruments but feeling no pain. I could hear everything. Why was I here? Why was a 72-year-old man getting a vasectomy? It sounds ridiculous when I say it out loud. It started 3 months ago with Vivian, my wife. She is 42, 30 years younger than me, beautiful, ambitious, and lately very demanding. She started crying every night, saying that her birth control pills were ruining her skin, causing her migraines, and making her gain weight. She said, "Ike, we need to enjoy our golden years without worrying. We need to be spontaneous. Please do this for me. If you love me, you will do this." I looked at her tear-stained face and I felt guilty. Vivian had been my secretary 20 years ago. When my first wife passed away, Vivian was there. She was attentive. She listened. She made me feel young again. I thought I was the luckiest man in the world to have a woman like her. So I agreed. I agreed to let a surgeon take a scalpel to my manhood at an age when most men are just trying to remember where they put their glasses. Dr. Evans was the surgeon. He was a man I had known for years. I had paid for his country club membership. I had even invested in his private clinic when he was starting out. I trusted him, or at least I thought I did. But today in the operating room, something was wrong. Even through the haze of the sedative, I could sense the tension. Dr. Evans was not humming his usual jazz tunes. He was quiet. His breathing was heavy and ragged. I kept my eyes closed, breathing rhythmically, pretending to be deep under the influence of the drugs. I felt the final stitch being pulled tight. The procedure was over. I expected the usual professional wrap-up, but then the sounds changed. The clinking of metal tools stopped. The room went silent for a moment. Then I heard it. A whisper. It was Dr. Evans. "Nurse, give me that envelope from the tray." There was a rustling of paper. Then the nurse's voice, soft and hesitant. "Dr. Evans, are you sure about this? This is highly irregular. If the medical board finds out..." "Do not talk to me about the medical board," Evans snapped. His voice was a harsh hiss. "Just do as you are told. I need you to give his wife this envelope immediately. Do not let him see it under any circumstances. Do you understand me?" "Yes, doctor," the nurse replied, her voice shaking. "This envelope contains the instructions for the final phase," Evans whispered again. "Tell her it is done. Tell her the device is planted." My blood ran cold. The device. What device? I was here for a vasectomy, a simple procedure to cut the tubes. What device was he talking about? And what was the final phase? I felt a surge of adrenaline that cut through the sedative like a knife. My heart began to pound against my ribs. I had to see that envelope. I had to know what was happening. I waited until I heard the heavy footsteps of Dr. Evans walking toward the scrub sink. The nurse was still by the instrument tray right next to my head. I opened my eyes, just a crack, just a tiny slit. The lights were blinding, but I forced myself to focus. The nurse was standing there holding a thick white envelope. She looked terrified. She placed it down on the metal tray for just a second to adjust her mask. In that split second, I saw it. The handwriting on the envelope was jagged and rushed, but I could read it clearly. It said dosage plan final phase. Dosage plan. I was not on any long-term medication. I took vitamins. I took an occasional aspirin. I was as healthy as a horse. Why would my wife need a dosage plan for me? And why was it the final phase? Panic rose in my throat. I wanted to sit up. I wanted to grab the nurse by the throat and demand answers. I wanted to punch Dr. Evans in his lying face. But years of negotiating with sharks in the construction business had taught me discipline. If I reacted now, I would show my hand. If I woke up now, they might just finish me off right here on the table. If they were planning something sinister and I revealed that I knew, they would not let me leave this room alive. So I did the hardest thing I have ever done in my life. I closed my eyes. I let my body go limp. I slowed my breathing down. I pretended to be the helpless, unconscious old man they thought I was. I heard the nurse pick up the envelope again. I heard the door to the operating room open. "Go give it to her," Evans ordered. "She is waiting in the private recovery suite. Make sure no one else sees it." The door closed. I was alone with Dr. Evans for a moment. I could hear him washing his hands. Then he muttered something under his breath. Something that chilled me to the bone. "Sorry, Ike. But everyone has a price, and your wife pays better than you do." I lay there in the cold silence, realizing that my entire world had just shattered. My wife. The woman I had showered with jewelry cars and a life of luxury. The woman I had just undergone surgery for. She was paying my doctor to do something to me. Something involving a dosage. Something involving a device. A few minutes later, the orderlies came in to move me. They lifted my heavy body onto a gurney. I kept up the act, letting my head loll to the side, drooling a little for effect. They wheeled me down the hallway. The fluorescent lights flashed overhead like warning signals. "Run, Ike. Run." They pushed me into the private recovery suite. The air in here smelled different. It smelled of expensive perfume, my wife's perfume, Chanel No. 5, a scent I used to love. Now it smelled like poison. "Oh, doctor, is he okay?" Vivian's voice rang out. It was sweet, sickeningly sweet. It was the voice of a concerned, loving wife. "He is doing fine, Mrs. Jeffries," Dr. Evans replied, walking in behind us. "The procedure went perfectly. He is still groggy from the sedation, but he should wake up in about 20 minutes. And the other matter?" Vivian asked, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Taken care of," Evans replied. "Did the nurse give you the package?" "Yes, I have it right here," Vivian said. I could hear the smile in her voice. "Good. Follow the instructions exactly, starting tonight. If you do it right, it will look completely natural. A heart failure or a massive stroke. No one will question it given his age." I felt a cold sweat break out all over my body under the hospital gown. They were planning to kill me. Tonight. They were going to use whatever was in that envelope to induce a heart attack or a stroke. And because I was 72, everyone would just nod and say, "Oh, well, he had a good long life." "Thank you, Dr. Vivian said. "You have earned your bonus." I heard the sound of a zipper. She was putting the envelope into her bag, her $20,000 Birkin bag that I had bought for her last Christmas. I opened my eyes, slowly fluttering them as if I was struggling to wake up. I had to act. I had to make them believe I was clueless. "Vivian." I groaned, my voice raspy and dry. "Vivian, where are you?" She was at my side in an instant. Her face hovered over mine. She looked beautiful. Her makeup was flawless. Her hair was perfect. She looked like an angel of death. "I am here, baby," she cooed, stroking my forehead with her cold, manicured hand. "I am right here. The surgery is over. You did so well. Did it work?" I asked, playing the part of the devoted husband. "Are we okay?" "Everything is perfect." "Ike," she whispered, leaning down to kiss my cheek. Her lips felt like ice. "We are going to have a wonderful future. Just you and me." I looked into her eyes. I saw no love. I saw only greed. I saw calculation. She was looking at me not as her husband, but as a walking bank account that was about to expire. I tried to sit up, but a wave of dizziness hit me. This time it wasn't an act. The drugs were still in my system. "Rest now, darling," Vivian said, pushing me back down gently. "Gavin is bringing the car around. We are going to take you home. I have everything prepared for you there." Gavin, my son-in-law, my daughter Kendra's husband, a white boy from the suburbs who had never worked a hard day in his life. He called himself an entrepreneur, but mostly he just gambled away my daughter's allowance. If Gavin was driving the car, then he was in on it too, And if Gavin was in on it, then Kendra might be too. My heart sank. Was I completely alone? Was my entire family conspiring to kill me? The door opened and Gavin walked in. He was wearing a polo shirt and expensive loafers. He looked at me with a smirk that he didn't even try to hide. "Is the old man ready to roll?" he asked, not even looking at me, but looking at Vivian. "He is waking up," Vivian said. "Be nice, Gavin. He has had a rough day." "Yeah, well, it is about to get rougher," Gavin muttered under his breath. I heard him. I heard every word, but I just groaned again and closed my eyes. "Okay, let's get him into the wheelchair," Gavin said, grabbing my arm with a grip that was too tight. "Come on, Ike. Let's go home." Home. The word used to mean safety. It used to mean sanctuary. Now it meant a death trap. I was being taken to a slaughterhouse and I was the cattle. But as they lifted me into the wheelchair, I made a silent vow. I was not going to die tonight. I was not going to let them win. I had built skyscrapers from nothing. I had fought men twice my size and won. I was Isaiah Jeffries and I was about to show these amateurs what happens when you mess with the wrong old man. I let my head drop to my chest, pretending to fall back asleep. But under my eyelids, my eyes were wide open, watching waiting planning. The war had begun. The leather seats of the Mercedes S-Class usually felt like a throne, but tonight they felt like the interior of a hearse. My son-in-law Gavin was behind the wheel, driving with a careless arrogance that made my stomach turn. I sat in the back next to Vivian, my wife, who was busy typing on her phone, ignoring me completely. I looked up at the rearview mirror and caught Gavin's eyes. He was watching me. There was no concern in his gaze, no respect, just a cold, predatory look of disdain. He looked at me like I was a piece of old furniture that needed to be thrown out to make room for something new. The city lights of Chicago blurred past the tinted windows. I tried to shift my weight, but the dull ache in my groin reminded me of the surgery I had just endured. A surgery I did not need. A surgery that was just the opening act for whatever nightmare they had planned for me tonight. I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to steady my breathing. I needed to keep my heart rate down. I needed to think. "Hey, Pops," Gavin said, his voice cutting through the silence of the cabin like a serrated knife. He didn't turn around. He just kept staring at me through that mirror. I didn't answer immediately. I let out a low groan, pretending the pain was too much to bear. Gavin chuckled, a low sound that grated on my nerves. "You know I was thinking while you were under the knife today. You need to take it easy, really easy. The doctor said recovery at your age can be tricky." I kept my eyes half closed, watching him. "What do you mean, Gavin?" I rasped out, my voice dry and weak. "I mean it is time to let go of the reins, old man," Gavin said. He tapped the steering wheel with his fingers in a rhythm that annoyed me. "I talked to the board of the Jeffries Foundation yesterday. I told them that given your health issues, I would be stepping in to handle the day-to-day operations. You know, just to take the load off your shoulders." My heart skipped a beat. The Jeffries Foundation. That was my legacy. That was the fund I started 30 years ago to help young black men from the South Side get into trade schools and engineering programs. It was named after my father. It had assets of over $10 million. And this white boy from the suburbs who had never held a shovel in his life thought he was going to take it over. "You did what I asked," trying to keep the rage out of my voice, trying to sound just like a confused old man. "I took initiative," Gavin said, smiling at his own reflection. "Vivian agrees with me." "Don't you, Viv?" Vivian didn't even look up from her phone. "Of course, honey," she said absent-mindedly. "Gavin is just trying to help you, Ike. You are getting too old to look over all those spreadsheets. You need to rest." Rest. That was their code word for die. I felt a fire burning in my chest. Gavin had no interest in trade schools or engineering. He was a gambler. I knew he had debts. I had seen the way he looked at expensive cars, the way he sweated when he watched sports games on TV. If he got his hands on the foundation, he would drain it dry in 6 months. He would destroy my name and my father's name. I wanted to scream. I wanted to lean forward and wrap my hands around his neck and squeeze until that smug look disappeared from his face. But I couldn't. Not yet. I was outnumbered. I was trapped in a moving car with 2 people who wanted me dead. Oh God, I moaned loudly, clutching my stomach. The pain. It is getting worse. Vivian finally looked up. Her eyes narrowed. "Just breathe. Ike, we are almost home. Don't be dramatic." I slumped against the door, pretending to pass out from the pain. It was the only way to stop myself from saying something that would get me killed right there on the expressway. As I lay there with my eyes closed, my mind raced back to last week. The signs had been there. I had just been too blind or too arrogant to see them. Last Tuesday, I had gone into my home office to get some cash from the wall safe behind the painting of the Chicago skyline. I usually kept about $50,000 in cash there for emergencies. When I approached the safe, I noticed something. The digital keypad was clean. Too clean. Usually there was a fine layer of dust on the keys I didn't use often, but the numbers for my birthday were smudge-free. Someone had wiped it down. I had entered my code. My birthday, April 4th, 1952. It opened. Everything looked normal inside. But then I checked the digital log. My safe had a feature that recorded failed attempts. There were 2 failed attempts recorded on Monday morning at 10 a.m. Monday morning at 10 a.m. I was at the barbershop. Vivian was at her yoga class, or so she said. And Gavin was supposed to be at a meeting. Someone had been in my office. Someone had tried to guess my code, and they had failed twice before giving up. At the time, I brushed it off. I thought maybe the cleaning lady had bumped it, or maybe I was remembering the time wrong. But now, lying in the back of this car, listening to Gavin hum a tune while he planned to steal my foundation, I knew the truth. It was him, or it was her, or it was both of them. They had been probing my defenses, testing the locks, trying to find a way into my fortune without leaving fingerprints. And when they realized they couldn't crack the safe, they decided to crack the man. They didn't want just the cash in the safe. They wanted it all. The accounts, the properties, the foundation, and the only way to get it all was if I was incapacitated or dead. We pulled into the driveway of the estate. The iron gates swung open slowly. The house looked looming and dark against the night sky. It used to be my pride and joy, a mansion I built with my own design. Now it looked like a mausoleum. Gavin parked the car. He didn't come around to open my door. He just got out and stretched his arms. "You got him, Viv?" he asked. Vivian sighed. "Help me, Gavin. He is heavy." They pulled me out of the car like a sack of potatoes. I leaned heavily on them, exaggerating my limp. My legs actually felt fine. The numbness was wearing off, but I dragged my feet, making them carry my weight. "Jesus, you need to lose a few pounds, Ike." Gavin grunted as we went up the front steps. We got him into the foyer. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Where was the housekeeper? Where was the cook? "I gave everyone the night off," Vivian said, as if reading my mind. "I wanted it to be quiet for your recovery. Just family. Just family. Just the executioners." "Put him on the sofa in the living room," Vivian ordered. "I need to go to the kitchen to prepare his medicine." The doctor gave me specific instructions. My blood froze. The envelope, the nurse's packet. Gavin dumped me onto the leather sofa. I let out a groan and clutched a throw pillow. He stood over me, hands on his hips. "You comfortable, old man?" he asked. "Water," I croaked. "I need water." "Vivian is making you something better," Gavin said with a smirk. "A special cocktail." I watched him walk over to the wet bar and pour himself a scotch. He didn't offer me any. He took a long sip, watching me over the rim of the glass. "You know, Ike," he said casually, "I have been thinking about remodeling this place. It is a bit dated, don't you think? All this dark wood. It feels like a museum. I am thinking open concept, modern, white marble." He was already redecorating my house. He was already spending my money. He was already dancing on my grave. I didn't answer. I just watched the door to the kitchen. I could hear sounds, the running of the tap, the clinking of a spoon against glass, and the unmistakable sound of paper tearing. Rip, rip. She was opening the envelope. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. This was it. This was the moment Dr. Evans had whispered about. The final phase. A few minutes later, Vivian walked back into the living room. She was holding a glass of water. The water was slightly cloudy. It had a strange tint to it, almost pinkish, but barely visible. "Here you go, darling," she said, her voice dripping with fake concern. She sat down on the edge of the sofa next to me. "What is this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice from shaking. "It is just a painkiller and something to help you sleep," she said, smiling. "Dr. Evans said you might be uncomfortable tonight. This will help you relax. It is a special blend." A special blend. I looked at the glass. I looked at her hand holding it. Her nails were painted a deep red, the same color as blood. I looked at Gavin. He had stopped drinking his scotch. He was leaning against the bar, watching us intently. His body was tense. He was waiting. They were both waiting. If I drank that, I knew exactly what would happen. Maybe my heart would stop. Maybe I would have a stroke. Maybe I would just start hallucinating and lose my mind so they could declare me incompetent tomorrow. I remembered the envelope's label. Dosage plan, final phase. "I am not thirsty," I said, turning my head away. Vivian's face hardened. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Ike, you have to drink this," the doctor insisted. "It is for your own good." "I don't want it," I said louder, pushing her hand away slightly. Gavin stepped forward. "Don't be a child, Ike. Vivian went to the trouble of making it for you. Drink the damn medicine." He wasn't asking anymore. He was commanding. Vivian brought the glass to my lips again. "Come on, baby. Just one swallow. It will make all the pain go away." The smell of the liquid hit my nose. It smelled bitter, chemical. It didn't smell like medicine. It smelled like death. I looked at the swirling, cloudy water. I looked at my wife's desperate eyes. I looked at my son-in-law's clenched fists. I realized then that there was no turning back. The line had been crossed. They weren't just thinking about it. They weren't just planning it. They were doing it. Right here, in my living room, under the crystal chandelier I had bought in Italy. If I refused, they might force it down my throat. Gavin was young and strong. He could hold me down. Vivian could pinch my nose. I had to be smart. I had to buy time. I took the glass with a trembling hand. "Okay," I whispered. "Okay. I will drink it." Vivian smiled again. "That is a good boy. Drink it all down." I raised the glass to my lips. I felt the cold rim against my skin. I saw Gavin take a step closer, his eyes hungry for the show. I tilted the glass back, but I didn't open my throat. I held the liquid in my mouth, the bitter taste burning my tongue. It tasted like battery acid and betrayal. I swallowed a tiny bit, just enough to make my Adam's apple move, and then I let out a violent cough, spluttering the rest of the liquid back into the glass and onto my shirt. "Oh God," I hacked, dropping the glass onto the carpet. "It tastes awful. I am going to be sick." Vivian let out a shriek, but it wasn't of concern, it was of frustration. "You spilled it," she hissed, staring at the wet stain on the rug. "I am sorry," I gasped, clutching my throat. "I am sorry, my stomach. I think I am going to vomit." Gavin looked at the spilled liquid with pure hatred. "Make him another one, Viv. We don't have another one," she snapped, turning on him. That was the whole packet. Silence fell over the room, heavy, dangerous. They stared at me. I stared at the floor, heaving, pretending to retch. I knew I had just bought myself a few hours, but I also knew I had just declared war. They were out of their special poison. Now they would have to get their hands dirty. "I am going to the bathroom," I groaned, pushing myself up. "I need to wash this off." "Let him go," Gavin muttered. He probably swallowed enough to knock him out anyway. I limped toward the hallway, my back to them, waiting for the bullet or the blow to the head. But it didn't come. Not yet. As I closed the bathroom door behind me and locked it, I looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were not the eyes of a victim. They were the eyes of a man who had just survived the first assassination attempt. I spat the remaining bitter taste into the sink and washed my mouth out. They wanted me to sleep. I would not sleep. Not tonight. Tonight I was going to hunt. The bathroom door was the only thing separating me from the wolves in my living room. I leaned over the porcelain sink, my hands gripping the cold edges until my knuckles turned the color of ash. My mouth tasted like copper and acid. It was the taste of the poison my wife had just tried to feed me. I didn't swallow. I hadn't swallowed a single drop, but the liquid was still coating my tongue, burning the roof of my mouth like a chemical fire. I turned on the faucet, letting the water run cold and loud. I cupped my hands and rinsed my mouth out once, twice, 3 times. I scrubbed my tongue with my finger, trying to get every molecule of that pinkish sludge out of my system. I looked up at myself in the mirror. The man staring back was 72 years old. His eyes were tired, his hair was gray. But there was a fire in those eyes that hadn't been there yesterday. Yesterday I was just an old man getting a surgery to please his young wife. Tonight I was a soldier behind enemy lines. I looked down at the corner of the bathroom. There sat a large potted plant, a peace lily. Vivian loved that plant. She had bought it for $500 from some boutique florist, saying it brought negative energy out of the room. Irony is a funny thing. I took the mouthful of water and residue I had been holding and I spat it directly into the soil of the peace lily. I watched the liquid seep into the dark earth. "Drink up," I whispered. "Let's see how much negative energy you can handle." I knew that plant would be dead by morning, and if I wasn't careful, I would be too. I unlocked the door and limped back out into the hallway. The living room was empty now. Gavin and Vivian had moved to the kitchen. I could hear the clinking of glass and low murmurs. I didn't go to them. I dragged my feet intentionally, making them shuffle against the hardwood floor, acting the part of the drugged invalid. I made my way to the master bedroom and collapsed onto the bed. My body was screaming in pain. The anesthesia from the surgery was fully wearing off now, and the incision site felt like someone was holding a lighter to my skin. But I couldn't take a painkiller. I couldn't trust anything in this house. Not the aspirins in the cabinet, not the water in the carafe on the nightstand. I was thirsty. My throat was parched. But I lay there staring at the ceiling fan spinning slowly in the darkness, and I endured the thirst. Time moved differently when you are waiting to be murdered. Every second felt like an hour. I listened to the house settling. I listened to the wind rattling the window panes. This house, my house. I built it 20 years ago. I poured the foundation myself. I chose every beam, every tile. It was supposed to be my sanctuary. Now it was just a gilded cage. Around 2 in the morning I heard it. Voices. Raised voices. They were coming from the library downstairs. The library was soundproofed. I had made sure of that when I built it so I could conduct business meetings without being disturbed. But someone had left the door cracked open. I sat up. The pain in my groin shot up my spine, making me grit my teeth. I ignored it. I grabbed my cane from the bedside table. I didn't put on my slippers. I needed to be silent. I walked barefoot on the cold floor. I moved like a ghost. For a big man, I have always known how to move quietly. You learn that on a construction site where one wrong step can send you falling 10 stories. I crept out to the landing and looked down into the foyer. A sliver of light was spilling out from the library door, casting a long, jagged shadow across the marble floor. I went down the stairs one by one. I stuck to the edges of the steps where the wood was reinforced and wouldn't creak. I held my breath. When I got to the bottom of the stairs, the voices became clear. It wasn't just an argument, it was panic. Why didn't you make him drink the whole thing? Gavin's voice was high-pitched, tight with fear. He spat half of it out. Vivian, I saw him. I couldn't force it down his throat, Gavin. Vivian hissed back. Her voice was trembling. He was suspicious. If I pushed too hard, he would have known something was wrong. We have to be subtle. Subtle? Gavin laughed a manic, dry sound. We don't have time for subtle. Do you know what day it is? It is Tuesday. We have 3 days, Vivian. 3 days. I pressed my back against the wall just outside the door frame. I could see them through the crack. Gavin was pacing back and forth, running his hands through his hair. He looked like a cornered rat. Vivian was sitting in my leather armchair holding a glass of wine, her other hand massaging her temple. I don't care about your schedule, Gavin, she said. I am not going to jail for murder because you are impatient. Dr. Evans said the dosage has to be cumulative. If we give him too much at once, it will look like poisoning. If we do it over 3 days, it looks like natural heart failure. I don't have 3 days, Gavin screamed, then lowered his voice, realizing how loud he was. He leaned over the desk, slamming his hand down on the mahogany surface. My desk. I need $5 million by Friday noon. Do you understand English? 5 million. My breath caught in my throat. 5 million. That wasn't just gambling debt, that was something else. That was an impossible amount of money for a man like Gavin to lose at a casino. Who do you owe this money to? Vivian asked, looking up at him with disgust. You told me it was 50,000. You told me you just needed to cover a bad investment. I lied, Gavin spat. I borrowed from the wrong people, okay. The Russians, the Bratva, they don't send debt collectors, Vivian. They send cleaners. If I don't have that money by Friday, they are going to cut me into pieces and mail me to my mother. And after they are done with me, they are coming for you because you are my wife's mother. The Russians. My son-in-law hadn't just bet on ponies. He had gotten in bed with the most dangerous organized crime syndicate in the city. He had leveraged my name, my reputation, and my fortune to borrow money from killers. And what about my debts? Vivian shot back, standing up. You think you are the only one in trouble? Neiman Marcus is threatening to sue me. I have maxed out the 3 credit cards Ike doesn't know about. I owe $200,000 in jewelry alone. If he finds out, he will divorce me and I will get nothing. I signed that prenup, remember? I get nothing if we divorce. I closed my eyes. So that was it. It wasn't just greed, it was desperation. They were both drowning. They were 2 drowning rats climbing on top of my head to keep from going under. So we are in this together, Gavin said, his voice dropping to a sinister growl. We need him dead or incapacitated by Friday morning. Once he is out of the picture, I get power of attorney over the foundation. I can wire the 5 million to the Russians immediately. And you get the widow's share. You get the house, the cars, the insurance. Everyone wins, except the old man. But he didn't drink enough, Vivian whined. The plan is ruined. No, it is not, Gavin said. He pulled something out of his pocket. I saw the glint of a small vial. I stole this from Dr. Evans' bag when he wasn't looking. It is the concentrated version. What is it? Vivian asked, staring at the vial. It is a hallucinogen mixed with a heart stimulant, Gavin explained. Evans said if we give him this, he won't just have a heart attack. He will lose his mind first. He will start seeing things. He will get violent, paranoid. We can call the doctors and say he is having a dementia episode. We can get him committed to a facility within 24 hours. Once he is declared mentally incompetent, I take control of the assets. Dementia. The word hung in the air like smoke. They wanted to steal my mind. They didn't just want to kill my body. They wanted to strip me of my dignity. They wanted the world to remember Isaiah Jeffries not as a titan of industry, but as a drooling, raving madman locked away in a padded room. That is even better than killing him, Vivian said, a slow smile spreading across her face. If he is in a home, we can control everything. We don't even have to wait for probate court. Exactly, Gavin said. So tomorrow morning, we don't ask him. We don't offer him a drink. We inject this into his breakfast, into his coffee. I don't care. We get this into his blood, and by noon, he will be chasing imaginary spiders on the ceiling. I had heard enough. My legs were shaking not from age, but from a rage so hot it felt like it could melt the steel beams I used to weld. They were going to turn me into a vegetable. They were going to erase me. I turned around slowly. Every instinct in my body wanted to burst into that room and beat Gavin within an inch of his life with my cane. I could do it. Even at 72, I had hands that could crush a windpipe. But I stopped myself. Violence was immediate. Violence was messy. And if I attacked them now, they would call the police. They would say I had already snapped. They would use my anger as proof of the dementia they were trying to fabricate. No, I needed to be smarter. I needed to be the general I had always been. I crept back up the stairs. The pain in my groin was throbbing in time with my heartbeat. $5 million by Friday. Today was Tuesday night. Technically Wednesday morning. I had 48 hours. I reached my bedroom and closed the door silently. I leaned against the wood, breathing hard. I looked at the peace lily in the bathroom. The leaves were already starting to droop. The tips were turning brown. The poison was fast. I walked over to the window and looked out at the sprawling lawn of my estate. The moonlight hit the driveway where Gavin's car was parked. They wanted a crazy old man. They wanted a show. I gripped the handle of my cane. Okay, I whispered to the empty room. You want crazy, I will give you crazy, but it won't be the kind of crazy you can control. I went to my closet and reached into the back behind the rows of custom Italian suits. I felt the cold metal of the floor safe. I didn't open it. I just touched the dial. I needed to make a plan. First, I needed to survive breakfast. Then I needed to make a phone call. I climbed back into bed, but I didn't sleep. I lay there with my eyes wide open, watching the shadows lengthen across the room. The sunrise was coming, and with it the war. I was Isaiah Jeffries. I had survived the Chicago riots. I had survived union busting. I had survived the death of my first wife. I was not going to be taken down by a shopping addict and a gambler with a fake smile. Come Friday, one of us would be destroyed. And it wasn't going to be me. The morning sun sliced through the heavy velvet curtains of my bedroom, but it brought no warmth. It only served to illuminate the dust motes dancing in the air and the grim reality of my situation. I had survived the night. I hadn't slept a wink. I had spent the dark hours listening to the house settling and plotting my next move. My throat was parched and my stomach growled with a hunger that was sharp and demanding, but I didn't dare go to the kitchen. In this house, even the tap water could be a weapon. Around 9 o'clock, I heard the heavy footsteps approaching my door. I quickly rearranged my limbs into a posture of vulnerability. I let my mouth hang open slightly and relaxed my facial muscles until I felt the droop of my eyelids. I had to sell this performance. My life depended on my ability to play the part of a confused, senile old man. The door creaked open. It was Gavin. He wasn't alone. I could smell the stale scent of cheap cologne and nervous sweat before I even saw the second man. Rise and shine. Pops, Gavin said, his voice booming with a fake cheerfulness that made my teeth ache. I groaned and shifted in the bed, blinking rapidly, as if the light hurt my eyes. "Who is there?" I mumbled, slurring my words intentionally. "Is that you, Martha?" Martha was my first wife, dead for 20 years. Bringing up her name was a nice touch, I thought. It signaled that my mind was wandering through the past untethered to the present. Gavin sighed loudly, a sound of exaggerated patience. "No, Ike, it is Gavin, your son-in-law, remember. And I brought a friend to see you. This is Mr. Thorne. He is a lawyer." I squinted at the stranger. Mr. Thorne was a small man with shifting eyes and a suit that looked expensive but didn't quite fit him right. He was holding a leather briefcase like a shield. I knew his type instantly. I had dealt with dozens of lawyers like him in the construction business. The kind who would look the other way for an envelope of cash. The kind who drafted contracts in back alleys. A lawyer, I rasped, trying to sit up but feigning weakness, so I collapsed back onto the pillows. "Am I in trouble? Did the union strike again?" Gavin exchanged a look with Thorne. A look that said, "See, I told you he is losing it. No one is striking." "Ike," Gavin said, stepping closer to the bed. "We are just here to help you. Vivian and I are very worried about your health. After the surgery and your confusion yesterday, we think it is best if you don't have to worry about the heavy lifting anymore." Thorne stepped forward, opening his briefcase on my nightstand, pushing aside my reading glasses. "Good morning, Mr. Jeffries. I have prepared some standard documents here. Just formalities, really. Given your current medical condition, it is advisable to assign a power of attorney, just so your family can handle the bills and the business while you recover. Power of attorney. The 3 deadliest words a wealthy man can hear when he is surrounded by vultures. This was their play. They didn't want to wait for me to die. They wanted control now. If I signed that paper, Gavin could drain my accounts, sell my properties, and liquidate the foundation before lunch. I looked at the document Thorne placed in front of me. The text was dense, but I saw the key phrases. Full authority. Unrestricted access. Immediate effect. "I don't understand," I muttered, shaking my head. "I need my glasses. Where are my work boots? I have to get to the site. The concrete trucks are coming at 6. Gavin grabbed my shoulder. His grip was tight, not comforting. "Buses don't run today, Ike. You are retired. Just sign the paper. It is just so Vivian can buy groceries and pay the doctors. You want Vivian to be taken care of, don't you?" He was using my wife as leverage. He knew I had a soft spot for her. Or at least the man I used to be did. "I don't have a pen," I said, looking around helplessly. Thorne quickly produced a heavy fountain pen from his pocket. It looked like a Mont Blanc, probably bought with the retainer fee Gavin had paid him from my stolen money. "Here, use this, Mr. Jeffries. Just right here at the bottom." I sat up slowly, my hands trembling. I wasn't faking the tremor entirely. The rage coursing through my veins made my whole body vibrate. I took the pen. It felt heavy and cold. Gavin leaned in close. I could smell the coffee on his breath and something else. Fear. He was desperate. He needed this signature. If I signed, he could pay off the Russians. If I didn't, he was a dead man walking. "Just sign your name." Ike, Gavin whispered, urgency creeping into his tone. "Right on the line." I lowered the pen to the paper. I watched the nib hover over the signature line. I could just sign it. I could give up. I could let them win and hope they would put me in a nice nursing home instead of a shallow grave. No. I was Isaiah Jeffries. I built the Skyline Tower. I survived the streets of the South Side. I would not sign my life away to this mediocre thief. I pressed the pen down hard, too hard. The nib tore through the paper. "Oops," I said, my voice trembling. "Careful," Gavin snapped. I tried again. My hand shook violently. I jerked my wrist and the pen slipped from my fingers. It rolled across the document, leaving a jagged black streak of ink before tumbling off the nightstand and landing on the carpet. But I wasn't done. As I reached out as if to catch the pen, I knocked over the glass of water sitting on the bedside table. It wasn't an accident. It was a calculated strike. The glass shattered. Water soaked the document, turning the legal text into a blurry, unreadable mess. "Oh no," I cried out, shrinking back into the pillows like a frightened child. I made a mess. I made a mess. Silence filled the room. A heavy, dangerous silence. I looked at the soaked paper. It was ruined. They would have to print another one. They would have to come back. I had bought myself time. Then the explosion came. "You stupid old fool." Gavin lunged at me. He didn't care about the lawyer watching. He didn't care about the pretense of being a loving son-in-law. He grabbed the lapels of my pajamas and hauled me up until my face was inches from his. His eyes were wild, bloodshot. "Look what you did," he screamed, spit flying onto my cheek. "That was the only copy we brought." "Gavin, please," Thorne stammered behind him. "Take it easy. We can print another one." "We don't have time to print another one," Gavin roared. He shook me hard enough to make my teeth rattle. "Why can't you just do one thing right, you useless piece of garbage? Just sign the damn paper." The mask was gone. This was the real Gavin, a violent, entitled bully. I didn't fight back. I let my head loll to the side. I started to whimper. "Please don't hurt me. I want to go home. I want my mama." I was playing the dementia card for all it was worth. I wanted Thorne to see this. I wanted him to see that his client was assaulting a defenseless senior citizen. Even a crooked lawyer has a limit, and Gavin was pushing it. Gavin let him go. Thorne said, his voice firmer this time. "You are going to leave marks. We can't have marks on him if we are claiming he is medically incompetent." Gavin shoved me back onto the mattress. I hit the headboard with a thud that sent a spike of pain through my skull. He stood over me, breathing heavily, his hands clenched into fists. "You are going to sign that paper," he hissed, pointing a shaking finger at my face. "I am going to go to the office and print another one. And when I come back, you are going to sign it if I have to break your fingers and guide the pen myself. Do you hear me?" I didn't answer. I just pulled the duvet up to my chin, covering my face, hiding the cold fury in my eyes. "Let's go." Gavin barked at the lawyer. As they turned to leave the room, I lowered the duvet just an inch. I needed to see them go. I needed to know I was safe for at least another hour. That was when I saw her. Kendra, my daughter. She was standing in the doorway. She must have been there the whole time. She was wearing her silk robe, her hair messy from sleep. Her face was pale. She had seen it all. She had seen her husband shake her 72-year-old father like a rag doll. She had heard him call me a useless piece of garbage. She had seen the fear in my eyes. Our eyes met. In that split-second, time seemed to stop. I looked at her with a silent plea. "Help me, Kendra. It is Daddy. The man who taught you to ride a bike. The man who paid for your college. The man who walked you down the aisle. Stop him. Call the police. Do something." I saw a flicker of emotion in her eyes. Was it shame? Was it pity? For a heartbeat, I thought she was going to step forward. I thought she was going to scream at Gavin to get out. But then Gavin stopped beside her. He didn't even look at her. He just reached out and gripped her arm. Not affectionately, possessively, dominantly. "Come on," he grunted, dragging her with him. Kendra looked at me one last time, and then she did the thing that broke my heart more than any poison ever could. She looked down. She turned her head away, breaking our gaze. She let him pull her into the hallway. She chose him. She chose the abuser. She chose the silence. The door clicked shut. I was alone. I lay there in the dim light, listening to their footsteps fade down the hallway. I felt a tear slide down my cheek. It was hot and salty. I had always known Gavin was my enemy. I had suspected Vivian was treacherous. But Kendra, my little girl, I had held on to a sliver of hope that she was just a victim, that she didn't know how bad it was. Now I knew. She knew. And she didn't care. Or she was too broken to care. It didn't matter anymore. The betrayal was absolute. The circle was closed. There was no one in this house who would save me. I wiped the tear away with the back of my hand. The sadness in my chest began to harden. It cooled and solidified until it felt like a block of concrete. "Good," I whispered to the empty room. "Good. No more distractions. No more hesitation. No more mercy. If I was going to survive, I had to stop being a father. I had to stop being a husband. I had to become the man I was 40 years ago, the man who destroyed his competition without blinking." I waited until I heard the front door slam and the sound of Gavin's car peeling out of the driveway. I threw the duvet off. I ignored the pain in my body. I swung my legs over the edge of the bed. I walked to the door and locked it. Then I went to the closet. I pushed aside the suits and reached into the toe of my old work boots. I pulled out the Nokia phone. It was time to make the call. It was time to bring in the only family I had left. The family you choose. I dialed the number. It rang once, twice. "Yeah," a gruff voice answered. "Luther, it is Ike," I said, my voice steady and cold as steel. "Ike, I thought you were dead. Not yet, I said, looking at the ruined power of attorney on the floor. But the war has started. I need you to listen carefully. Jiao Thuk Bao Den. Initiate protocol Black Panther. There was a pause on the line. Then Luther's voice came back sharp and professional. Understood. What is the target? The target is everyone, I said. Burn it all down, Luther. Burn it all down. The sound of the deadbolt sliding into place was the loudest noise I had ever heard. Click. Just one small metallic sound, but it echoed through the master bedroom like a gunshot. I stared at the mahogany door handle. I didn't try to turn it. I knew it was locked. My own bedroom. The room where I had slept for 20 years. The room where I had made love to my wife. It was no longer a sanctuary, it was a cell. And I was the inmate. They said it was for my safety. That was the lie they told each other to make the cruelty palatable. We have to lock him in so he doesn't wander off and hurt himself. He is confused. He is having an episode. But I knew the truth. They locked me in because they were afraid. They were afraid I would run. They were afraid I would find a phone. They were afraid that the old lion still had claws. I stood there for a moment, leaning heavily on my cane, listening to their footsteps retreating down the hallway. I heard Gavin laughing. It was a nervous, high-pitched laugh. Then I heard Vivian shushing him. I waited until the house went silent again. Then I moved. I ignored the throbbing pain in my groin. Pain was just information. It told you were still alive. I made my way to the walk-in closet. It was a cavernous space filled with rows of Italian suits, silk shirts, and designer shoes. Vivian had insisted on updating my wardrobe years ago, trying to make me look like a modern CEO. But in the back corner behind a rack of winter coats sat a pair of old Red Wing work boots. They were scuffed, covered in dried concrete and mud from job sites I had worked on 3 decades ago. Vivian hated them. She had tried to throw them out a dozen times. But I had told her they were my good luck charm. If those boots go, I go. I knelt down on the carpet, gritting my teeth as the stitches from the surgery pulled tight. I reached into the left boot. My hand fumbled past the worn leather lining until I felt it. Cold, hard plastic. I pulled it out. It was a Nokia 3310, a brick, a relic from the early 2000s. I kept it charged and I kept it hidden with a prepaid SIM card that couldn't be traced to any of my main accounts. Vivian didn't know it existed. To her, a phone without a touchscreen was just a paperweight, but to me it was a lifeline. It was indestructible, just like I intended to be. I pressed the power button. The screen lit up with that familiar green glow. 3 bars of signal. Thank God. I didn't have to look up the number. I knew it by heart. It was the number of the only man in this world I trusted with my life. Luther. We had served in Vietnam together. We had watched friends die in the mud of the Mekong Delta. When we came back to a country that didn't want us, we watched each other's backs on the streets of Chicago. I built buildings. Luther built a reputation as the best private investigator in the city. He wasn't cheap and he wasn't nice, but he was loyal. I dialed. The phone rang once. Twice. Yeah, a voice answered. It sounded like gravel in a cement mixer. No hello, no pleasantries, just readiness. Luther, it is. Ike, I whispered, keeping my voice low. Ike, I haven't heard from you in 6 months. You sound like hell. I am in hell, Luther. Listen to me carefully. I don't have much time. Protocol, Black Panther. There was a pause on the line, a long, heavy silence. Protocol. Black Panther was a code we had established 10 years ago. It meant the worst had happened. It meant I was compromised. It meant the enemy was inside the wire. Understood, Luther said, his tone shifting instantly from casual to lethal. What is the situation? Do you need extraction? I can be there in 20 minutes with a crowbar and a shotgun. No, I hissed. No extraction. Not yet. If you come in here guns blazing, they will win. They will say I am senile and dangerous. They will say you are an intruder. They have a lawyer. They have a doctor. They have everything papered over. Who is the target? Luther asked. Gavin and Vivian, I said. My voice cracked when I said her name. It still hurt. The betrayal cut deeper than any knife. Vivian, Luther repeated. I told you, Ike. I told you 10 years ago she had eyes like a shark. You didn't want to listen. I know, I said, closing my eyes. I know you were right. You can say I told you so later. Right now I need you to work. I am locked in my bedroom. They are drugging me. They are trying to induce a stroke or a psychotic break so they can get power of attorney. They have a deadline. Friday. Friday, Luther said. That is 3 days. Gavin owes money, I said. 5 million to the Russians. He needs control of the foundation by Friday noon. The Russians. Luther let out a low whistle. That explains the desperation. Okay, Ike. What do you need? I need dirt, I said. I need leverage. I need you to find out everything about Gavin's debt. Who is the handler? Where is the money going? And Vivian. Find out who she is sleeping with. Find out about her credit cards. And check the medical records of Dr. Evans. He is the surgeon who did this to me. He is on their payroll. I am on it, Luther said. But Ike, 3 days is a long time for an old man trapped in a house with 2 vipers. Are you sure you can hold out? I looked at the old work boots in front of me. I looked at the calloused hands that had built skyscrapers. I am not just an old man, Luther, I said, my voice hardening. I am Isaiah Jeffries. I am going to play their game. I am going to make them think they are winning. And when they get close enough to strike, I am going to cut their heads off. Copy that, Luther said. Stay off this line unless it is an emergency. I will act as your eyes and ears out here. Keep your head down, brother. I will. Out. I ended the call. I felt a surge of strength. I wasn't alone anymore. The cavalry wasn't coming to rescue me. They were coming to arm me. I went to put the phone back in the boot. Click. The sound of the deadbolt turning froze my blood. They were coming back. I scrambled up from the floor. The phone was still in my hand. I couldn't put it back in the boot in time. The closet door was open. They would see me kneeling there. I heard the bedroom door handle turn. I threw myself toward the hamper in the corner of the closet. It was overflowing with dirty clothes I hadn't been able to send to the dry cleaners because of the surgery. I shoved the Nokia deep into the pile of soiled shirts and underwear. It was a risk. If Vivian decided to do laundry today, I was dead. But I had no choice. I turned around just as Vivian walked into the bedroom. She stopped. Her eyes scanned the room. She saw the empty bed. Then she saw me standing in the doorway of the closet, breathing hard. "What are you doing in there?" Ike, she asked. Her voice was sharp, suspicious. I leaned against the doorframe, clutching my chest. I tried to look confused. I tried to look like a man who didn't know where he was. I was looking for my suit, I stammered. "Your suit?" Vivian asked, stepping closer. Her eyes narrowed. "Why do you need a suit, Ike?" "You are recovering from surgery." "I have a meeting," I said, letting my eyes lose focus. "The mayor. I have to meet the mayor. We are breaking ground on the South Side project today." Vivian stared at me. She was analyzing every micro-expression on my face. She was looking for a lie. "Ike, that project was finished 15 years ago," she said slowly, walking toward me. "You are confused again." I blinked rapidly. 15 years? No. That can't be right. I just talked to the foreman. Vivian stopped right in front of me. She smelled of wine and expensive lotion. She reached out and touched my face. Her hand was soft, but her touch made my skin crawl. "You were talking to someone," she said. I heard voices. "Who were you talking to, Ike?" My heart slammed against my ribs. Had she heard me through the door? Had I been too loud? "I was talking to Luther," I said. Vivian's face went pale. "Luther? You called Luther? How? Where is the phone?" I tapped the side of my head with a trembling finger. "He is in here," I whispered. "I talk to him all the time. He tells me to watch out for the snakes." Vivian stared at me for a long, terrifying second. Then she let out a breath she had been holding. A laugh bubbled up from her throat. A cruel, relieved laugh. "Oh, Ike," she said, shaking her head. "You really are losing it, aren't you? Talking to your imaginary friends. Luther hasn't been to this house in years. He says hello," I said, smiling a vacuous, empty smile. "Right," Vivian said, rolling her eyes. "Well, you tell Luther to shut up and let you sleep." She stepped past me into the closet. My heart stopped. She was standing inches from the laundry hamper. If she looked down, if she saw a glimmer of that plastic phone case, it was over. She reached for a silk robe hanging on the rack above the hamper. The hem of the robe brushed against the pile of dirty clothes. I held my breath. She pulled the robe down. She turned around. She didn't look at the laundry. To her, it was just a pile of filth. Something for the maids to deal with. She walked back out of the closet, wrapping the robe around herself. Come on, Ike, get back in bed, she ordered. I brought you some soup you need to eat, and then you need to take your medicine. I shuffled after her, my legs feeling like jelly, not from age but from the adrenaline crash. I climbed back into the bed. Vivian placed a tray on my lap. Tomato soup, and a small paper cup with 2 pills in it. Eat up, she said, sitting on the edge of the bed watching me. I looked at the pills. They were white, innocent looking, but I knew they were bullets aimed at my brain. I picked up the spoon. My hand shook. Thank you, Vivian, I said. You are so good to me. I am, aren't I? She said, stroking my arm. I am the only one who cares about you, Ike. Everyone else has forgotten you. I nodded. I took a spoonful of soup. It tasted like ash. I ate under her watchful eye, and when it came time for the pills, I put them in my mouth. I took a sip of water. I made a gulping sound, but I didn't swallow. I tucked them under my tongue in the little pocket of flesh I had practiced using. Good boy, Vivian said, standing up. Now get some sleep. Tomorrow is a big day. She walked to the door. She put her hand on the light switch. Good night, Ike. Good night, Vivian. The room went dark. Then came the sound again. Click. She locked it. I waited 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Then I spat the pills into my hand. I wrapped them in a tissue and shoved them under the mattress. I looked at the dark closet door. My phone was in there. Luther was out there. The hunt had begun. I closed my eyes, but I didn't sleep. I visualized the map of my life. I visualized the battles I had won. This was just another job site, just another problem to solve. And I was the foreman. I woke up to the smell of decay. It wasn't the musty smell of an old house or the stale odor of a closed room. It was the sharp, pungent scent of rotting vegetation. Sunlight was streaming through the bathroom door, which I had left ajar the night before. I dragged my body out of bed. My joints popped and my surgical wound throbbed with a dull, persistent ache, but my mind was razor sharp. I needed to see the proof. I needed to know that I wasn't just a paranoid old man imagining enemies in the shadows. I walked into the bathroom and looked at the corner where the peace lily stood. Or rather, where it used to stand. The lush green leaves that had reached up toward the skylight yesterday were gone. In their place hung limp black tendrils that looked like they had been dipped in acid. The stems had collapsed, turning into a slimy mush that dripped onto the marble floor. The soil in the pot was bubbling slightly, emitting that foul chemical stench I had tasted the night before. I stared at the dead plant, and a cold shiver ran down my spine. That plant was a living organism just like me. It had vascular systems, it needed water, it needed nutrients, and one mouthful of the cocktail my wife had prepared was enough to liquefy it from the inside out in less than 8 hours. If I had swallowed that liquid, my stomach lining would look like those leaves right now. My heart would have seized. My veins would have collapsed. I wouldn't be standing here contemplating my next move. I would be a cold body in the morgue waiting for a cremation that would hide all the evidence. I reached out and touched one of the dead leaves. It disintegrated between my fingers, turning into black dust. This is it, I whispered to myself. This is the murder weapon. I heard the heavy thud of footsteps in the hallway. I quickly washed my hands, scrubbing away the black residue of the plant. I splashed cold water on my face, making sure to leave droplets on my forehead to simulate a feverish sweat. I shuffled back to the bedroom and threw myself onto the mattress, messing up the sheets to look like I had tossed and turned all night. The key turned in the lock. They were getting bolder. They didn't even knock anymore. Vivian walked in first, carrying a tray. She was wearing a crisp white blouse and black slacks, looking every bit the efficient executive wife. But her eyes were tired. There were dark circles under them that makeup couldn't hide. Guilt or worry. I didn't care which. Gavin followed her. He looked worse. His hair was unkempt and he was wearing the same clothes as yesterday. He smelled of stale bourbon and cigarettes. He was edgy. His eyes darted around the room before landing on me. Look at him, Gavin sneered. He looks like a corpse already. Hush, Gavin, Vivian snapped. She set the tray down on the bedside table. On it was a steaming mug of coffee and a small glass of orange juice. The juice was thick and pulpy. I knew immediately that was where the poison was. Good morning, Ike, Vivian said, her voice straining to be cheerful. How did you sleep? I stared at her with a vacant expression, letting my jaw hang loose. Who are you? I mumbled. Vivian sighed. It is Vivian, honey. Your wife. My wife. I repeated slowly as if testing the word. My wife is in the garden. She is planting roses. I saw Gavin smirk. See, I told you. The old coot is losing his marbles. The dementia narrative is working perfectly. Vivian sat on the edge of the bed. She picked up the glass of orange juice. Listen, Ike, you need to drink this. It has your vitamins and your heart medicine. Dr. Evans said it is crucial for your recovery. I looked at the glass. It was opaque. I couldn't see if there was pink powder dissolved in it, but I knew it was there. I could smell it over the scent of the oranges, a faint metallic tang. I don't want it, I whined, turning my head away like a petulant child. It tastes bad. Vivian's patience snapped. She grabbed my chin with her free hand, forcing my face toward her. Her fingernails dug into my skin. You are going to drink this, Isaac, she hissed, using my full name. Stop acting like a baby. We don't have time for this today. Drink it or wear it. Gavin threatened, stepping closer. He cracked his knuckles. I am not in the mood for games today, old man. This was it. They were escalating. Yesterday they tried to trick me. Today they were ready to force me. If I refused, they might hold my nose and pour it down my throat. I couldn't let that happen. But I couldn't drink it either. I had to give them what they wanted. They wanted a show. They wanted a crazy old man. I let my eyes widen in sudden terror. I stared past Vivian's shoulder at the empty corner of the room. The rats, I screamed. Vivian jumped back, spilling a little of the juice on the duvet. What? What are you talking about? The rats, I roared, sitting up and pointing a shaking finger at the wall. They are coming out of the concrete. Look at them. They are huge. Get them off me. Get them off. I started slapping my own arms as if brushing off invisible vermin. I kicked my legs violently, tangling myself in the sheets. I let out a guttural howl that sounded like an animal in a trap. Make him stop, Gavin yelled, covering his ears. He is freaking out. Give him the juice, Vivian screamed, trying to steady the glass. It will calm him down. No, I shouted. It is poison. The rats poisoned it. I swung my arm out in a wide, wild arc. My hand connected with the glass of juice. It went flying across the room, shattering against the wardrobe. The orange liquid splattered everywhere, soaking into the expensive carpet. You son of a bitch, Gavin lunged at me. I didn't retreat. I channeled 40 years of rage into this moment. I wasn't just acting anymore. I was letting the beast out of the cage. I grabbed the heavy ceramic lamp from the nightstand. I didn't care that it was an antique. I ripped the cord from the wall. Stay back, I screamed, my voice cracking. I know who you are. You are the devil. The white devil. You came to steal my soul. I hurled the lamp at Gavin. I aimed slightly to the left intentionally, but it was close enough. It smashed into the wall right next to his head, showering him with ceramic shards. Gavin ducked, covering his face. He looked terrified. For a moment, he wasn't the arrogant predator. He was just a scared boy facing a man who had built skyscrapers with his bare hands. He is violent, Vivian shrieked, scrambling off the bed and backing toward the door. The doctor said this might happen. He said the hallucinations could make him aggressive. I tore the sheets off the bed and threw them at Vivian. I stood up on the mattress, towering over them. My hospital gown was twisted. My surgical wound was bleeding slightly through the bandages, but I felt no pain. I felt powerful. Get out, I bellowed. Get out of my job site. You are not union. You are scabs. Scabs. I was mixing my past with the present, creating a tapestry of madness that was undeniable. To them, I was reliving a construction strike from the 80s. To them, my mind was completely gone. Gavin grabbed Vivian's arm. We have to go. Lock him in. Just lock him in. But he didn't drink the medicine, Vivian cried, looking at the mess on the floor. It doesn't matter, Gavin yelled, dragging her into the hallway. Look at him. He is already cooked. His brain is fried. We don't need the drugs anymore. We have enough for a diagnosis right now. I grabbed a book from the table and threw it at the closing door. Get out, I screamed one last time as the door slammed shut. I heard the key turn in the lock. Then I heard them leaning against the door on the other side. They were panting. Did you see his eyes? Gavin gasped. He looked like a demon. It is the withdrawal combined with the first dose, Vivian said, her voice shaking. It is progressing faster than I thought. Good, Gavin said. His voice was regaining its confidence. This is actually better. We don't need to wait until Friday to call the doctors. We can call them tomorrow. We can say he attacked us. We can say he is a danger to himself and others. Tomorrow, Vivian asked. Yes, Gavin said. We call Dr. Evans in the morning. We get him sedated and shipped off to Sunnyvale. Once he is in that facility with a diagnosis of violent dementia, the judge will grant me emergency conservatorship by the afternoon. Sunnyvale. The name sent a chill through me. I knew Sunnyvale. It wasn't a care facility. It was a warehouse for the unwanted elderly. A place where they sedated you until you stopped breathing. If I went there, I would never come out. But then Gavin said something else, something that made me freeze. And once I have the signature on the foundation transfer, I can wire the money to the Russians. And then we can discuss what to do with Kendra. What about Kendra? Vivian asked. She knows too much, Gavin said coldly. She saw me rough him up. She is weak, Vivian. She might crack. Once the old man is gone, we might have to arrange an accident for her too. Maybe a car crash. She is always a terrible driver. I stood there in the middle of my wrecked bedroom, my chest heaving. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a cold, hard clarity. They weren't just going to kill me. They were going to kill my daughter, my Kendra. The girl who had looked away, the girl who had betrayed me. But she was still my blood. She was still the little girl I had carried on my shoulders. Gavin had crossed the final line. He had threatened my child. I looked at the shattered lamp on the floor. I looked at the orange stain on the carpet. You think I am crazy? I thought, clenching my fists until my nails dug into my palms. You think I am a broken old man who has lost his mind? I walked over to the door and pressed my ear against the wood. I heard their footsteps fading away. They were going downstairs to celebrate, to drink to their victory, to toast to my insanity. I walked back to the bathroom. I looked at the dead plant one last time. Rest in peace, I whispered to the withered leaves. You served your purpose. I washed my face. I looked in the mirror. The wild look was gone, replaced by the cold calculation of a general. They wanted to send me to Sunnyvale tomorrow. That meant I had less than 24 hours. I needed to move. I needed to get out of this room. But the door was locked and the window was too high for a man with a fresh surgical wound to jump from. Or was it? I walked to the window and looked down. Below my bedroom was the roof of the sunroom. It was a 15-foot drop to the sunroom roof and then another 10 feet to the grass. In my prime, I could have done it in my sleep. At 72, with stitches in my groin, it was suicide. But staying here was death. I went to the closet. I dug out the Nokia phone from the laundry hamper. I checked the screen. One new message from Luther. Found the handler, Sergei Volkov. He's not patient. He is meeting Gavin at the docks tonight at midnight. I will be there. Midnight. I checked my watch. It was 11 a.m. I had time, but not much. I sat down on the floor and began to tear the bed sheets into strips. I wasn't going to jump. I was going to rappel, just like I used to tie down the rebar on the high-rises. My hands worked automatically, tying the knots, testing the strength. You want to play games, Gavin, I thought. You want to hurt my daughter. I pulled the knot tight. Tonight the old man comes down from the tower, and hell is coming with him. The smell of roasted garlic and rosemary drifted across the room and assaulted my senses. My stomach contracted violently, twisting into a knot that felt like a clenched fist. I had not eaten in 24 hours. My throat was so dry it felt like it was lined with sandpaper. And there, sitting at a small folding table they had dragged to the foot of my bed, were my wife and my son-in-law eating a steak dinner. It was a power move, pure and simple. They were feasting on the carcass before the animal was even dead. I lay perfectly still, my breathing shallow and rhythmic, my mouth slightly open to mimic the slack-jawed look of the heavily sedated. Under the duvet, my hands were clenched so tight my fingernails were cutting into my palms. I focused on the pain in my hands to distract myself from the hunger and the rage. This steak is incredible, Gavin said, his voice thick with chewing. He cut another piece, the knife scraping against the fine china plate. Screech. Screech. The sound grated on my nerves like nails on a chalkboard. You really outdid yourself, Viv. Vivian didn't answer immediately. I heard the clinking of a wine glass being set down. I am not hungry, she murmured. I can't eat with him lying there like that. It feels wrong. Wrong! Gavin let out a short bark of laughter. What is wrong is wasting a perfectly good filet mignon. Look at him, Vivian. He is gone. The lights are on, but nobody is home. That cocktail you gave him this morning fried his circuits just like Evans said it would. I kept my eyes closed, but my ears were straining to catch every syllable. Speaking of Evans, Vivian said, her voice lowering to a whisper. Are you sure we can trust him, Gavin? $50,000 is a lot of money, but if he gets cold feet... He won't get cold feet, Gavin interrupted, cutting another piece of meat. I already paid him half up front. Cash. He needs the money for his alimony payments. Evans is desperate, Viv. Desperate men are the most reliable men because they have no other options. I felt a surge of bile in my throat. Dr. Evans, the man I had played golf with, the man whose practice I had helped fund. He had sold my life for $50,000. That was the price of my breath. That was the price of my 40 years of building this city. And the death certificate, Vivian asked. Gavin swallowed a mouthful of wine. Taken care of. Post-operative cardiac complication. That is what it will say. A blood clot traveled to the heart. Common in patients his age, especially after surgery. No autopsy, no investigation, just a tragic end to a long life. Cremation scheduled for Saturday. Cremation. They were going to burn the evidence. They were going to turn me into ash before anyone could ask why a healthy man died 2 days after a routine procedure. I felt a bead of sweat roll down my temple. It tickled, but I didn't dare wipe it away. I had to be a statue. I had to be the corpse they wanted me to be. But what if he wakes up? Vivian asked. Her voice was trembling. What if the drugs wear off before Friday? Gavin sighed, the sound of a man patience wearing thin. He isn't going to wake up. Not really. Even if he opens his eyes, his brain is mush. Did you see him this morning? Screaming about rats, throwing lamps? He is cooked, Vivian. Stick a fork in him. He paused, and I heard the sound of him pouring more wine. The liquid glugged into the glass. Besides, Gavin continued, his voice taking on a harder, darker edge. He doesn't have a choice, and neither do we. What do you mean, neither do we? Vivian asked. Gavin went silent for a moment. The only sound was the scraping of his fork. Then he spoke, and his voice was devoid of all warmth. I leveraged the house, Viv. What Vivian's voice spiked. I leveraged the house, Gavin repeated calmly. I took out a second mortgage, a bridge loan, high interest, short term. You did what Vivian shrieked. This house is in Ike's name. You can't mortgage it. I can when I have a power of attorney document with his signature on it, Gavin said. But he didn't sign it, Vivian cried. He spilled water on it, remember? Gavin laughed. A low, ugly sound. Oh, Viv, you are so naive. I traced his signature from an old check. I have a guy, a forger. He is an artist. The document looks ironclad. I submitted it to the lender yesterday afternoon. You forged his signature, Vivian whispered. She sounded horrified. Not because of the crime, but because of the risk. I did what I had to do, Gavin snapped. The Russians gave me a deadline, but the bank is different. This is a shadow lender, Viv. Hard money. If I don't pay them back with the foundation money by Friday evening, they don't just send a letter. They foreclose. Immediately. They take the house. You gambled my house, Vivian screamed. This is my house, Gavin. I earned this house. I put up with him for 20 years for this house. Technically, it is his house, Gavin corrected her. And soon it will be the bank's house unless he dies on schedule. So stop whining about the morality of it and start praying that his old heart gives out. Because if it doesn't, we are both on the street. And the Russians will be looking for me. And the bank will be looking for you. I lay there, and for the first time in my life, I felt a rage so pure, so white-hot that it almost blinded me. This house. I built this house. I didn't just buy it, I built it. I remembered the day we broke ground. It was 25 years ago. I was out there in the mud with the crew. I poured the foundation myself. I checked every rebar tie. I selected the limestone for the facade from a quarry in Indiana personally. Every beam, every nail, every tile was chosen with care. This house was my masterpiece. It was supposed to be the place where I grew old, where my grandchildren would play. And this parasite, this gambling addict with soft hands and a hollow soul, he had signed it away to a loan shark. He had forged my name, the name that was etched on cornerstones all over Chicago to cover his own incompetence. They were eating steak in the bedroom of the man they were murdering, discussing how they had sold the roof over his head. I wanted to kill him. The thought wasn't abstract, it was specific. I imagined rising from the bed. I imagined grabbing the steak knife from his hand. I imagined the look of surprise on his face as I drove it into his chest. I imagined twisting it. But I couldn't. Not yet. If I moved now, I would lose. Gavin was 30 years old. He was desperate. If I attacked him, he would fight back. And in my condition with a surgical wound and no food in my stomach, I might lose. And even if I won, even if I killed him right here, I would go to prison. An old black man killing his white son-in-law. The narrative would be spun against me. They would say I was crazy. They would say I murdered him in a fit of dementia. No. Death was too easy for Gavin. I didn't just want him dead. I wanted him destroyed. I wanted him to lose everything. I wanted him to feel the fear I was feeling right now. I wanted him to look at a locked door and know there was no way out. I forced my muscles to relax. I forced my breathing to remain shallow. Vivian was crying now, soft, selfish sobs. "My house," she whimpered. "My beautiful house." "Shut up," Gavin hissed. "Drink your wine. We are in this together. If I go down, you go down. You think the police will believe you didn't know. You are the one who mixed the cocktail, Viv. You are the one who gave him the juice this morning. You are an accessory to attempted murder, so dry your eyes and help me finish this." They ate in silence after that. The only sounds were the scraping of cutlery and the heavy breathing of two people who were realizing that they had stepped off a cliff and were waiting to hit the bottom. After what felt like an eternity, Gavin pushed his chair back. "I am going to check the safe again," he said. "Maybe the old man wrote the combination down somewhere else." "Don't wake him," Vivian warned. "He is out cold," Gavin said dismissively. He walked over to the bed. I could feel his presence looming over me. He smelled of meat and wine and fear. He leaned down close to my face. I could feel his breath on my cheek. "Die already, you stubborn old bastard," he whispered. "Just die." He patted my cheek. A hard, disrespectful slap that was meant to degrade. Then he walked away. I heard them clearing the table. I heard the door open and close. I heard the lock turn. I opened my eyes. The room was dark again. The smell of their dinner still hung in the air, taunting me. I sat up slowly. The hunger was still there, but it was different now. It wasn't a hunger for food. It was a hunger for retribution. They had taken my safety. They had taken my family. Now they had taken my home. I looked at the spot where Gavin had stood. "You want the combination to the safe, Gavin," I thought. "You want the treasure." I swung my legs out of bed. I stood up, ignoring the pain. I walked to the desk where they had left the pen and paper yesterday. I picked up the pen. I tore a blank sheet of paper from the notebook. I wrote a series of numbers on it. It wasn't the combination to the safe. It was the coordinates to a construction site I owned down by the docks. An abandoned project. A place of concrete and steel and deep dark holes. I folded the paper. If Gavin wanted to find my fortune, I would send him on a treasure hunt. I would send him exactly where I wanted him. I walked to the closet and pulled the Nokia from the laundry hamper. 1 bar of battery left. Enough. I texted Luther. "The house is mortgaged. Shadow lender." Gavin forged my signature. "Get a copy of the deed." And Luther, "Bring the demolition crew." I put the phone back. I went back to bed. I lay there in the dark, visualizing the structure of my revenge. I would dismantle their lives brick by brick. I would strip the copper from their walls. I would shatter their windows. And when the dust settled, I would be the only one standing. Because I was the builder, and I was the wrecking ball. The lock clicked again, but this time it was softer. It didn't have the angry metallic snap of Gavin's hand or the sharp, efficient twist of Vivian's wrist. It was hesitant, slow, like the person on the other side wasn't sure they wanted to come in. I was sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the blank wall. My hunger had turned into a dull, hollow ache that radiated from my stomach to my bones. But my mind was full. It was full of blueprints and demolition plans. I heard the door creak open, and I didn't turn around immediately. I knew who it was by the sound of her breathing. Short, jagged breaths, the breathing of someone who is drowning in their own panic. Daddy. The word hung in the air, fragile and broken. It was the voice of a little girl who had scraped her knee. But the woman standing in the doorway was 35 years old. I turned my head slowly. Kendra stood there, clutching the doorframe as if it was the only thing keeping her upright. She looked terrible. Her hair, which was usually styled in perfect braids, was frizzy and loose. Her eyes were swollen red from crying. She was wearing a silk robe that looked too expensive for a Tuesday afternoon, and she was shivering. I looked at her, and for a split second my heart softened. This was my baby girl. This was the child I had held in my arms when her mother died. This was the girl I had taught to ride a bike in the driveway of our old house on the south side before we had money, before we had this mansion. I remembered her smile when she graduated college. I remembered the pride I felt when she walked across that stage. But then I looked closer. I saw the fear in her eyes, but it wasn't fear for me. It was a selfish fear. It was the fear of a woman who was about to lose her comfort. Kendra. I rasped, my voice dry and scratchy. Are you okay? She didn't answer. She rushed into the room and fell to her knees beside the bed. She grabbed my hand. Her palms were clammy and cold. Daddy, you have to do it, she sobbed, burying her face in my mattress. Please, Daddy. Just sign the papers. Just give him what he wants. I felt a cold stone settle in my chest. I had hoped against hope that she had come to save me. I had hoped she had a phone hidden in her pocket. I had hoped she had called the police. But she hadn't come to break me out. She had come to break me down. I pulled my hand away from her grip. It wasn't an aggressive move, just a weary one. What did he tell you, Kendra? I asked, looking down at the top of her head. What did Gavin say? She looked up, tears streaming down her face, ruining her makeup. He is crazy, Daddy. I have never seen him like this. He is pacing in the library. He has a gun. He said if he doesn't get the money by Friday, the Russians will come for us. He said they will hurt me. She grabbed my hand again, squeezing it tight. He said he will kill both of us if you don't sign. He said it is the only way to save the family. The family. I looked at her and I realized with a devastating clarity that she didn't mean me. When she said family, she meant herself and Gavin. She was fighting for her marriage to a monster. She was fighting for the lifestyle I had paid for. Kendra. I said, my voice low and steady. He is drugging me. Your husband is poisoning me. Do you know that? She flinched. She looked away, her eyes darting to the corner of the room. I know he is giving you something to help you sleep. He told me. He said it is just to keep you calm until the transfer is done. He said he won't hurt you if you just cooperate. You believe him? I asked. You really believe that a man who mortgages his wife's house behind her back is going to be merciful to an old man he hates? Daddy, please, she wailed, desperate now. It doesn't matter. Just sign the power of attorney. Give him the foundation. We can make more money later. You always make more money. You are Isaiah Jeffries. You can fix anything. Just fix this. Save me, Daddy. Save me. Save me. That was it. The truth laid bare. She didn't care if I died. She just didn't want to get hurt. She was willing to sacrifice her father, the man who had given her everything, to appease a husband who treated her like a doormat. I looked at her and I saw the cracks in the foundation. I had built her life with money, but I hadn't built her character. I had protected her too much. I had shielded her from the harsh realities of the world, and in doing so, I had made her weak. I had raised a sheep who had fallen in love with a wolf, and now the wolf was hungry. I felt a profound sadness wash over me. It was heavier than the concrete blocks I used to lift. It was the death of a dream, the dream that my legacy would live on through her, the dream that I had raised a strong black woman who knew her worth. She wasn't that woman. She was just Gavin's wife. I realized then that she was beyond saving. If I gave her the money, Gavin would spend it and come back for more. If I saved her today, she would betray me again tomorrow. She had chosen her side. And in war, you do not comfort the enemy's allies. You use them. I let my body sag against the pillows. I let my eyes droop. I let my mouth hang open slightly, mimicking the confusion I had shown earlier. I needed her to think I was breaking. I needed her to think the fear and the drugs were winning. Kendra, I whispered, my voice trembling. I can't sign. My hands, they won't work. You have to try, Daddy, she begged, shaking my arm. Try harder. I can't, I moaned, closing my eyes. But the money. There is money. She stopped crying instantly. The mention of money had a magical effect. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand and leaned closer. What money, Daddy? Where? The safe, I breathed out. The safe in the closet, not the wall safe, the floor safe. Gavin already tried the floor safe, she whispered urgently. He couldn't open it. He said you changed the code. I did. I murmured, drifting in and out of my fake delirium. I changed it to keep it safe from him. There is cash, gold, and the bonds, millions. Kendra's eyes widened. I could see the greed warring with the fear. Millions. What is the code, Daddy? She asked. Her voice was no longer the voice of a scared child. It was sharp, predatory. Tell me the code. I can open it. We can give it to Gavin. He will let us go. I paused. I let the silence stretch until I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. I was about to feed my own daughter a lie that would send her husband on a wild goose chase, a lie that would buy me the time I needed to destroy them. It is, I gasped, pretending to struggle for air. It is your mother's birthday. Gavin tried that, she hissed. April 4th. It didn't work. No, I whispered, opening my eyes and looking straight into hers. Not like that. Backwards. Backwards, she repeated, frowning. The numbers are reversed, I said. Day, then month, then year, but backwards. So, 1952, 04, 04, she muttered, doing the mental math. No, I said, closing my eyes again, feigning exhaustion. Figure it out, Kendra. Mother's birthday. Reversed. She sat back on her heels. Her mind was racing. I could see the gears turning. She wasn't thinking about saving me anymore. She was thinking about the gold. She was thinking about being the hero who brought the loot to Gavin. She thought if she gave him the money, he would love her again. Thank you, Daddy, she whispered. She stood up. She smoothed her robe. She looked at me one last time. She didn't say I love you. She didn't ask if I needed water. She didn't adjust my pillow. She just turned and walked to the door. Kendra. I called out softly just before she left. She stopped, hand on the knob. Yeah. Don't let him hurt the house, I said. She didn't answer. She slipped out and the lock clicked shut. I listened to her footsteps running down the hallway. She was running to him. She was running to tell him the secret. I lay back on the pillows and stared at the ceiling. A single tear escaped from the corner of my eye and rolled into my ear. It was cold. The code I gave her was fake. My wife's birthday was April 4th. But the combination to the floor safe was actually the date I buried my father. Gavin would try the birthday backwards. He would try it forwards. He would try every variation. And every time he failed, the lockout timer on the safe would double. He would spend hours wrestling with that steel box. He would get frustrated. He would get sloppy. And while he was distracted fighting a metal box, I would be preparing for the real fight. I wiped the tear away with a rough hand. Goodbye, Kendra. I whispered to the empty room. I had entered this room as a father. I was leaving it as a widower of my own family. They had stripped away my wife, my home, and now my child. There was nothing left to lose. And a man with nothing to lose is the most dangerous man on earth. I sat up and swung my legs over the side of the bed. The pain was still there, but it felt distant now. My mind was clear. I looked at the closet. The laundry hamper was still there. The phone was still hidden. But I didn't need to call Luther again yet. I had given the order. The demolition crew was coming. I needed to prepare my body. I needed to be ready to move when the time came. I started to do leg lifts. Small, painful movements. 1, 2, 3. I gritted my teeth. I forced the blood to flow. I forced the muscles to wake up. They thought I was dying. They thought I was a vegetable. They were wrong. I was just getting warmed up. The house was silent, but it wasn't a peaceful silence. It was the heavy, suffocating silence of a bomb waiting to detonate. I lay in the dark, listening to the rhythm of my own heart and the distant hum of the refrigerator downstairs. It was midnight, the witching hour, the time when demons come out to play. I knew they were in the closet. I could hear the faint rustle of fabric as they pushed aside my suits. I could hear the heavy breathing of two people who were about to commit a felony, Gavin and Vivian, my wife and my son-in-law. They were huddled over the floor safe like scavengers picking at a carcass. I had given Kendra the code, 1952, April 4th, reversed, 250404. It was a fake code, but it was close enough to a real one that the safe wouldn't lock them out immediately. It would tease them. It would let them think they were getting somewhere. I heard the beep of the keypad. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then a pause. "Come on, come on," I heard Gavin whisper. His voice traveled through the open closet door, carrying the desperate edge of a man who owes $5 million to the Russian mob. Beep. Then the mechanical whir of the tumblers engaging. I smiled in the darkness. I hadn't given them the wrong code. I had given them the code to the guest safe. The decoy safe I had installed 5 years ago when I started keeping more cash in the house. I knew that one day someone might come looking. I just never thought it would be the people sleeping under my roof. "I got it," Gavin hissed. "It is opening. Vivian, look. We are saved." I heard the heavy steel door creak open. I could imagine the light from Gavin's flashlight cutting through the gloom of the closet, illuminating the velvet-lined interior. I could imagine their greedy hands reaching in, expecting to find stacks of $100 bills, bearer bonds, and gold coins. They were expecting the keys to the kingdom. Instead, they found my message. There was a long, confused silence. "What is this?" Vivian asked. Her voice was sharp, disappointed. "Where is the money?" "There is nothing here," Gavin said. He sounded breathless. Just a picture and a piece of paper." I closed my eyes and visualized the contents. A black and white photograph of me from 1968. I was 20 years old, standing in the mud of the Mekong Delta holding an M16 rifle. My shirt was unbuttoned, my face was smeared with camouflage paint, and my eyes in that picture were cold. Dead. They were the eyes of a man who had seen hell and decided to build a condo there. And underneath the photo was a single index card. On it, I had written 4 words in thick black marker. "I know everything." I waited for the realization to hit them. I waited for them to understand that the dementia was an act, that the confusion was a trap, that they weren't the hunters, they were the prey. "What does it mean?" Vivian whispered. Her voice was trembling now. "Ike, he knows. He knows Gavin." "Shut up," Gavin snapped, but his voice cracked. "He doesn't know anything. He is a vegetable. He is drooling on his pillow right now. This must be old. He must have put this in here years ago." "Paranoid old bastard." "No," Vivian argued. "Look at the ink. It is fresh. And the picture, why would he put that picture there? That is the picture he keeps in his wallet. He never takes it out." Silence again, then the sound of paper being crumpled. "He played us." Gavin growled. The sound was low, guttural, like a dog about to bite. "He played us. He gave Kendra the code to the decoy. He knew we would send her. He knew everything." I heard movement. Fast, violent movement. Footsteps pounding on the carpet. "He is mocking me," Gavin roared. He burst out of the closet. The light from the hallway spilled into the bedroom, silhouetting him. He looked like a madman. His hair was wild, his shirt was soaked with sweat, and in his right hand, catching the gleam of the moonlight, was a gun. A Glock 19. I recognized the profile. It was my gun. He had stolen it from the nightstand drawer downstairs. "Gavin, no!" Vivian screamed, running after him. Gavin didn't stop. He crossed the room in 3 strides. He grabbed the front of my pajamas and hauled me up from the pillows. "Wake up, you son of a bitch!" he screamed, spitting in my face. I let my head loll back, my eyes unfocused. I tried to keep up the act, but my heart was hammering against my ribs. The cold barrel of the gun pressed against my forehead. It smelled of gun oil and steel. "Where is the money?" Gavin screamed, shaking me so hard my teeth rattled. "Stop acting. I know you are in there. I saw the note. Where is the real money?" I looked at him. I looked past the gun, past the sweat, past the rage. I looked into his eyes and I saw a coward, a terrified little boy playing gangster. I decided to drop the mask, just a little, just enough to let him know who he was dealing with. I focused my eyes. I stopped the trembling in my hands. I stared straight into his pupils. "You are holding it wrong," I said. My voice was calm, steady. It wasn't the voice of a senile old man, it was the voice of Isaiah Jeffries. "What?" Gavin blinked, taken aback. "The safety," I said, nodding at the gun. "You left the safety on. You pull that trigger, nothing happens. Except I break your wrist." Gavin looked down at the gun in panic. In that split second, I could have disarmed him. I could have snapped his wrist like a dry twig. But Vivian was there, and I was still an old man recovering from surgery. If I fought, I might win the battle but lose the war. I needed them to destroy themselves. Gavin realized the safety was actually off. I had lied. He turned back to me, his face purple with rage. "You think this is a game?" he hissed, pressing the barrel harder against my skin until it bruised. "I have a deadline, Ike. The Russians don't care about your little notes. If I don't have $5 million by Friday noon, I am dead. And if I am dead, I am taking you with me." "Pull the trigger," I whispered. "Go ahead. Do it." Gavin's finger tightened on the trigger. I saw the muscles in his forearm flex. "Do it," I challenged him. "Put me out of my misery." "But you won't find a dime. The money isn't in the house, Gavin." "It isn't in the bank." "Where is it?" he screamed. "It is in hell." I smiled, a cold, wolfish smile. "I sent it down there waiting for you. Come and get it." Gavin let out a sound of pure frustration. He raised the gun, preparing to pistol whip me. "Gavin, stop!" Vivian shrieked. She threw herself onto his arm, dragging him back. "Get off me, Viv," he shouted, trying to shake her off. "I am going to kill him. I am going to blow his brains out." "No, you are not!" she screamed, clinging to him. "Think, Gavin. Think. If you kill him now, we get nothing. The accounts are frozen until probate. The life insurance won't pay out if it looks like murder. And the Russians want money, not a corpse." "He knows," Gavin panted, staring at me with wild eyes. "He knows everything. He is not crazy. He is laughing at us." "It doesn't matter what he knows," Vivian said, desperate. "He is 72 years old. He is trapped in this room. He is weak. We can make him talk. We can force him to give up the real code." "How?" Gavin asked, lowering the gun slightly. "Pain," Vivian said. Her voice sent a chill through me deeper than the gun barrel. "Everyone breaks with pain, Gavin. Even tough guys like him. We stop the drugs. We stop the food. We use other methods. But we need him alive." Gavin looked at me, then at Vivian. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his shaking hands. "You are right," he said. "You are right. Killing him is too easy." He shoved me back onto the bed. I hit the mattress hard, my surgical wound flaring with sharp agony. I groaned, clutching my side. "Listen to me, old man," Gavin said, leaning over me, the gun still in his hand. "The games are over. No more acting. No more notes. You have 24 hours. If you don't give me the location of the assets by tomorrow night, I am going to start cutting pieces off you. I will start with your fingers, then your toes, and I will make you watch while I do the same to Kendra." I stayed silent. I glared at him. "You hear me?" Gavin yelled. "I hear a dead man talking," I muttered. Gavin raised the gun again, but Vivian pulled him toward the door. "Let's go," she said. "Let him rot in here tonight. No water, no lights. Let him think about what is coming." They backed out of the room. Gavin kept the gun trained on me until the door slammed shut. The lock clicked. Then I heard the sound of something heavy being dragged against the door from the outside. A dresser maybe, or a heavy chair. They were barricading me in. I lay in the dark, my heart rate slowly returning to normal. My forehead throbbed where the gun barrel had pressed. They were going to torture me. That was the new plan. Starvation. Dehydration. Physical pain. I touched the spot on my chest where my heart beat strong and steady. They didn't understand. I had grown up in a time when pain was a daily reality. I had worked construction with broken ribs. I had walked miles in freezing snow. Pain was an old friend. But the threat against Kendra, that was real. Even though she had betrayed me, she was still my blood, and Gavin was desperate enough to do it. I had to accelerate the timeline. Friday was too far away. I couldn't wait for the demolition crew. I needed to bring the house down now. I crawled to the edge of the bed. I reached under the mattress and pulled out the tissue with the pills I had hidden. I needed to clear my head completely. No more feigning dementia. The mask was off. Now it was just war. I looked at the window. The moon was high. I went to the closet again. I pulled the Nokia from the laundry. I texted Luther. Plan B. They are armed, hostile. They know I am awake. Forget the deed. Bring the pain. Tomorrow morning. 0600. I hit send. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I knelt down by the bed not to pray for salvation, but to pray for aim. Lord, I whispered, keep my hand steady, keep my mind sharp, and forgive me for what I'm about to do to my family. I stood up. I went to the bathroom and drank water from the tap, cupping it in my hands. It tasted metallic, but it was life. I looked at the mirror. The man staring back wasn't Ike the builder. He wasn't Mr. Jeffries the philanthropist. He was the soldier from the photograph. I went back to the closet and pulled out a belt. a heavy leather belt with a brass buckle. I wrapped it around my fist. I sat in the chair facing the door. I wouldn't sleep tonight. I would wait. Come morning, when they opened that door, they wouldn't find a victim. They would find the landlord, and rent was due. The heavy dressers scraped against the floorboards on the other side of my bedroom door. They were barricading me in. I listened to the thud of wood against wood, and then the receding footsteps of my wife and her lover. They were going downstairs to argue, to drink, to plan how they would torture the location of my fortune out of me in the morning. They thought they had trapped a helpless old man. They thought the lock and the barricade were enough. But they had forgotten who I was. I wasn't just a man who signed checks. I was a man who knew how things were put together, and more importantly, I knew how to take them apart. I waited until their voices in the hallway faded into the distance. Then I moved. I didn't go to the door. I went to the window. It was a double-hung sash window, reinforced glass, heavy timber frame. I had installed it myself 15 years ago. I knew its weight. I knew its weaknesses. I reached into the waistband of my pajama pants and pulled out the tool I had been hiding for 3 days. It wasn't a weapon. It was a stainless steel soup spoon I had stolen from my dinner tray on the first night. I had spent hours rubbing the handle against the rough, exposed brick in the back of the closet, sharpening the edge until it was as thin as a screwdriver blade. I jammed the flattened handle into the groove of the window lock. Paint flaked away. Years of varnish resisted me, but I applied steady pressure. Not force, leverage. Give me a lever long enough and I can move the world. Or in this case, I can pop a lock. Snap. The latch gave way. But opening the window wasn't enough. They had installed child safety stops years ago when the grandkids visited. The window would only open 4 inches. Not enough for a man my size. I had to take the whole sash out. I worked the spoon into the side jambs, digging for the hinge pins. My hands were shaking, not from age, but from the adrenaline dumping into my system. Downstairs I could hear Gavin shouting. He was losing it. Good. His anger was my cover noise. I popped the first pin. It clattered onto the sill. I caught it before it hit the floor. I attacked the second pin. Sweat stung my eyes. My surgical wound was throbbing, a deep, rhythmic bass drum of pain that synced with my heartbeat. Every time I twisted my torso, I felt the stitches pulling. I knew I was doing damage. I knew I was tearing myself open. But pain was temporary. Death was permanent. The second pin came free. I gripped the heavy window frame. It was time. I pulled it inward. It groaned, a protest of wood against wood. I lowered it gently to the carpet. The night air rushed in. It was cold. Chicago cold. It bit at my exposed skin and filled my lungs with the taste of freedom. I looked down. Below my window was the sloping copper roof of the sunroom. It was a 12-foot drop to the copper, then another 10 feet to the driveway. In my 30s, I would have jumped it without thinking. At 72, with a sliced scrotum and a body full of trace sedatives, it was a death-defying stunt. I didn't hesitate. I couldn't. I climbed onto the sill. I swung my legs over. The movement tore the incision. I felt it happen. A sharp, hot tear like a zipper opening in my flesh. I gritted my teeth so hard I thought a molar would crack. A low animal grunt escaped my throat. I looked down at my gray pajama pants. A dark stain was already spreading at the crotch. Blood, warm and sticky. I didn't stop. I couldn't look at it. I lowered myself, hanging by my fingertips from the sill. My arms screamed. The muscles I hadn't used for heavy lifting in years burned with lactic acid. I dangled there for a second, a 72-year-old man defying gravity and biology. Then I let go. I hit the copper roof of the sunroom hard. I tried to roll to absorb the impact, but my body was stiff. My shoulder slammed into the metal with a sickening crunch. I slid down the slope, my bare feet scrambling for purchase on the cold, slippery copper. I clawed at the gutter to stop my fall. The metal edge sliced my palms, but I held on. I came to a halt with my legs dangling over the edge of the sunroom roof. I lay there panting, staring up at the stars. I was out. I was out of the room, but I wasn't safe yet. "Hey," the voice came from above. I froze. I looked up. Gavin was leaning out of the window I had just exited. His face was twisted in a mask of pure shock. He must have come back to check on me. He must have heard the thud. He saw me. He saw the empty window frame. He saw the blood on the sill. "He is on the roof," Gavin screamed. He turned back into the room, bellowing like a wounded bull. "Vivian, get the gun. He is on the roof." I heard him scrambling away from the window. He wasn't going to climb down. He was too cowardly for that. He was running for the stairs. He was coming out the back door. I had 30 seconds, maybe less. I looked down at the ground. 10 feet. Concrete driveway. I didn't have a choice. I swung my body over the edge of the gutter. I hung for a split second and dropped. The impact jarred every bone in my body. My knees buckled and I collapsed onto the hard concrete. My vision went white with pain. My groin felt like it was on fire. I rolled onto my side, gasping for air, unable to stand. I looked at my pants. The blood stain was bigger now. It was soaking through to the concrete. I heard the back door crash open. There he is. Gavin ran out onto the patio. He had the gun in one hand and a flashlight in the other. The beam swung wildly across the yard, searching for me. I forced myself up. I couldn't run. I could only hobble, a pathetic, shuffling run that felt like moving through molasses. I needed cover. I couldn't make it to the main gate. It was too far and the electric code would take too long to punch in. Then I saw it. The landscaping truck. It was a massive white box truck parked near the service entrance. Green and clean landscaping. They came every Wednesday morning at 5 a.m. to do the grounds. It must be early morning. I had lost track of time. The driver was nowhere to be seen, probably around the side of the house checking the irrigation system. The back of the truck was a metal ramp leading up into a bed filled with grass, clippings, leaves, and mulch. It was my only chance. I limped toward the truck. The flashlight beam swept over the grass behind me, getting closer. "Stop or I will shoot!" Gavin screamed. I didn't look back. I hit the metal ramp. My bare feet slipped on the morning dew. I scrambled up on my hands and knees, dragging my bleeding body into the dark cavern of the truck bed. The smell of cut grass and fertilizer hit me. It was the smell of earth, the smell of a grave. I crawled to the back behind a pile of trash bags filled with leaves. I burrowed myself into the mound of grass clippings. I pulled the debris over my head, covering my face, covering my white pajamas, covering the blood. I lay there buried alive, holding my breath. I heard Gavin's footsteps running on the gravel. Crunch, crunch, crunch. "Where did he go?" I heard him yell. He stopped right at the bottom of the ramp. I could feel his presence. I could see the glow of his flashlight filtering through the layers of grass, covering my eyes. He couldn't have gone far. Vivian's voice joined him. She sounded breathless, terrified. "Look at the blood, Gavin. There is a trail." The trail ended at the driveway. I had managed to keep the blood contained once I hit the grass. "Check the bushes," Gavin ordered. Then I heard another sound. A heavy diesel engine rumbling to life. The truck shook. The driver was getting in. "Hey, you!" Gavin shouted. "Wait!" My heart hammered so hard I thought it would shake the truck. If the driver stopped, if Gavin looked in the back, it was over. The driver's door slammed shut. The engine revved. "I need to check your truck," Gavin yelled, banging on the side of the metal box. "I can't stop, buddy," the driver yelled back, his voice muffled by the cab. "I am late for the landfill. Boss is on my ass." "Open the back," Gavin screamed. "Go to hell, man. Get off my truck." The air brakes hissed. The truck lurched forward. I felt the momentum push me deeper into the pile of grass. We were moving. I heard Gavin screaming behind us. A string of curses that faded into the distance. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I lay there in the dark, surrounded by the smell of decay and dirt, and I started to laugh. It was a silent laugh, a painful, wheezing laugh that shook my ribs. I was bleeding. I was half naked. I was buried in trash, but I was free. The truck picked up speed, hitting the bumps of the service road. Every bump sent a fresh wave of agony through my lower body, but I welcomed it. It was the feeling of distance. Every mile was a victory. I reached into my pocket. The Nokia was still there. Miraculously, it hadn't fallen out during the fall. I pulled it out. The screen was cracked, but it was still glowing. I watched the signal bars flicker as we moved away from the estate. I was leaving behind 40 years of my life. My house, my clothes, my art collection. But I had the only things that mattered. My life and my rage. I waited until the truck had been driving for 20 minutes. We were on the highway now. The smooth hum of the tires on asphalt told me we were heading toward the city, toward the industrial district where the landfills and the scrapyards were. My territory. I pushed the grass clippings off my face. I looked at the blood on my legs. It had slowed down. The pressure of the climb and the adrenaline had clamped the vessels somewhat, but I needed a doctor, a real doctor, not a paid shill like Evans. I dialed Luther. "I am out," I whispered when he answered. Ike Luther's voice was tight. "I was just loading the shotgun." "Where are you?" "I am in the back of a landscaping truck heading south on I-90, green and clean logo. I see it on the tracker," Luther said. "I traced your phone. I am 10 minutes behind you." "Meet me at the scrapyard," I said. "The one on Western Avenue." "The scrapyard. You going to ground?" "No," I said, looking at my bloody hands in the dim light of the truck interior. "I am going to get patched up. And then I am going to finish this." I hung up. I lay back in the grass. The smell was comforting now. It reminded me of the earth I used to dig. Gavin and Vivian were back at the house right now. They were probably panicking. They were scrubbing the blood off the driveway. They were trying to come up with a story. They didn't know that the story was no longer theirs to write. I closed my eyes and let the darkness take me. I wasn't Isaiah Jeffries, the philanthropist, anymore. I was Ike, the survivor, and I was coming back from the dead to collect my debt. The office smelled of stale cigar smoke and gun oil. It was a smell I had known for 40 years, a smell that usually meant safety, but tonight it just made me want to retch. I was sitting on a metal folding chair in the back room of Luther's salvage yard office. My pajama pants were around my ankles and Luther was kneeling in front of me with a needle and thread. "Hold still." "Ike," he grunted. "This is going to sting more than the fall." He didn't use anesthetic. He poured half a bottle of cheap bourbon over my groin and then he started stitching. I bit down on a leather belt he had handed me. I didn't scream. I let the pain wash over me. I let it sharpen my mind. Every pierce of the needle was a reminder of what they had done to me. Every tug of the thread was a promise of what I was going to do to them. Luther was fast. He had been a field medic in the Delta before he was a recon specialist. His hands were rough and scarred, but they were steady. He tied off the last stitch and wiped the blood away with a clean rag. "There," he said, standing up and cracking his back. "It isn't pretty, but it will hold. You can walk on it. You can fight on it. Just don't go entering any dance competitions." I pulled my pants up, wincing as the fabric brushed against the fresh wound. I took the bottle of bourbon from the table and took a long, burning pull. It hit my empty stomach like liquid fire. "Thanks, Luther," I rasped. "Don't thank me yet," Luther said. His voice was grim. He walked over to his desk, which was buried under stacks of paper and computer monitors. He didn't look at me. He looked at a file folder sitting in the center of the desk. The way he looked at it made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. "What did you find?" I asked, walking over to him. My limp was better now. The pain was manageable. Luther picked up the file. He tapped it against his palm. "I hacked Evan's private server," he said. "It wasn't hard. The man spends $50,000 on a country club membership but uses his birthday as his password. I got everything Ike, the emails, the bank transfers, and the surgical logs. The real ones." I stared at the folder. "Show me." Luther hesitated. He looked at me with an expression I had never seen on his face before. It was pity. "Ike," he said softly, "you need to sit down for this." "I am standing," I said, my voice hardening. "Tell me." Luther opened the file. He pulled out a medical diagram. It looked like a map of veins and arteries. "You didn't have a vasectomy yesterday," Ike Luther said, pointing to a red circle on the diagram. I frowned. "But the incision, the pain." "They cut you open, yes," Luther explained. "But they didn't snip the vas deferens. Evans inserted a device. It is called an embolic coil. It is usually used to treat aneurysms. But he placed it in your femoral artery. My femoral artery. The main highway of blood to my legs." "Why?" I whispered. "Because of where he placed it," Luther said, tracing the line with his finger. "It is designed to create a slow-forming clot, a deep vein thrombosis. It gathers platelets slowly. In 3 or 4 days, maybe 5, that clot breaks loose. It travels up, into your lungs, or your brain." "A pulmonary embolism," I said. The realization hit me like a sledgehammer. "Exactly," Luther said. "Sudden death, massive stroke or heart failure. And because you just had surgery down there, any coroner would write it off as a post-operative complication. It happens in 1% of cases. It is the perfect murder, Ike. It is a time bomb they planted inside your own body." I touched the bandage on my groin. I wasn't just wounded. I was rigged to blow. "So the poison at home," I started. "Was just insurance," Luther finished. Or maybe just cruelty. They wanted to speed it up or make you pliable enough to sign the papers before the clot killed you. But even if you hadn't drunk a drop of that juice, you were a dead man walking by Saturday. I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. They had paid a doctor to sew death into my flesh. "Can we get it out?" I asked. Luther nodded. "I have a vet who owes me a favor. He operates off the books. We can get it out tonight. But Ike, that is not the worst part." I looked at him. How could it be worse? I had a device in my artery designed to kill me. My wife and son-in-law were the architects. What could possibly be worse than that? Luther pulled another paper from the file. It was a lab report. It was dated 4 months ago. I kept digging. Luther said, his voice low and dangerous. I wanted to know why. Why now? Why was Vivian so desperate for money that she would kill the goose that laid the golden eggs? Gambling debts are one thing, but murder. Murder takes a special kind of motivation. He handed me the paper. It was an HCG blood test result. Positive. Vivian is pregnant. I read the words, but my brain refused to process them. She is 16 weeks along, Luther said. 4 months. I stared at the paper. Pregnant. Vivian was 42. We hadn't been intimate in over a year. My libido had dropped and she had moved into the guest room claiming I snored. It is not mine, I said simply. I know, Luther said. That is why I kept digging. I ran a cross-reference on the prenatal genetic screening she did last week. She used a fake name, but she used your insurance. He pulled out the final piece of paper. It was a DNA compatibility test. I looked at the names. Mother Vivian Jeffries, Father Gavin Miller. The room spun. I had to grab the edge of the desk to keep from falling. Gavin, my son-in-law, my daughter's husband. They weren't just conspirators, they were lovers. I felt a wave of nausea so violent I had to swallow back bile. The image of them together, the image of Gavin, the man I had welcomed into my home, touching my wife. The image of them laughing at me behind my back, laughing at Kendra. It is a boy, Luther said softly. They are having a son. I closed my eyes. A son. It all fell into place. The horrific, twisted logic of it all. They didn't just want the money, they wanted the dynasty. If I died, Vivian would inherit the bulk of the estate. If Kendra died or was cut out, Vivian and Gavin would have everything. And they would have a child, a male heir to carry on the bloodline. A bloodline that was a perverse mix of my wife and my daughter's husband. They were replacing me. They were replacing Kendra. They were building a new family on the ashes of the old one. That is why she wanted the vasectomy. I whispered, my voice sounding hollow and dead. Luther nodded. She needed a reason to get you on the table to plant the coil, but she also needed to make sure there were no more heirs from you. And it was a humiliation ritual, Ike. Let's be honest. She wanted to neuter you while she carried another man's child. I sank onto the chair. I felt old. Older than I had ever felt in my life. I felt the weight of every year, every struggle, every sacrifice. I had built a fortune to protect my family, and that fortune had turned them into monsters. Poor Kendra, I said. Luther snorted. Don't waste your pity, Ike. She is weak, but she is not innocent. She chose him. She doesn't know about the baby, I said. She can't know. If she knew, she might kill them herself, Luther said. Or she might just break. I sat there in the silence of the salvage yard. Outside I could hear the hum of the city I built. I looked at the papers in my hand, the medical logs, the pregnancy test, the DNA match. This wasn't a murder plot anymore. This was a Greek tragedy. It was biblical in its depravity. Ike, Luther said, putting a hand on my shoulder. What do you want to do? We have enough here to go to the cops. We can bury them under a mountain of felonies, attempted murder, insurance fraud, conspiracy. I looked up at Luther. I looked at the old soldier who had saved my life in the jungle. Cops, I repeated. If I go to the cops, they get arrested, they go to trial, they get lawyers. Vivian will cry and say she was manipulated. Gavin will plead insanity or turn state's evidence. They might serve 10 years, maybe 15. And the baby, Luther asked. The baby is innocent, I said. But the parents are cancer. I stood up. I crumpled the DNA test in my fist. No cops, I said. Luther smiled, a grim, humorless smile. I was hoping you would say that. I don't want them in a cell, I said. I want them in a cage of their own making. I want to destroy their reputation. I want to destroy their hope. I want them to think they have won everything, and then watch it turn to dust in their hands. I looked at the calendar on the wall. Today was Wednesday. I want my accounts emptied, I said. Every cent. Move it all to the charitable trust. Leave the personal accounts with zero. Done, Luther said, moving to his keyboard. And I want you to set up a meeting, I said. A meeting with who? With the Russians, I said. Luther stopped typing. He turned to look at me. You want to talk to Volkov? I want to buy Gavin's debt, I said. Luther stared at me for a long moment. Then he started to laugh. A low, appreciative chuckle. You are going to become his loan shark. I am going to become his nightmare, I corrected him. I want to own the debt. I want to hold the note. So when Friday comes, it isn't the Russians knocking on the door. It is me. And Vivian, Luther asked. I looked at the ultrasound picture, the blurry image of the child that was the symbol of my ultimate betrayal. Vivian wants a legacy, I said. She wants to be the matriarch. I am going to give her a stage. I picked up the phone. Set up a party, I said. A surprise party. For my recovery. Invite everyone. The board members. The socialites. The press. And invite Gavin's creditors. When Luther asked, Tomorrow night, I said. But you are supposed to be dead by then. Exactly, I said. I am going to walk into that room, and I am going to show them a ghost. I walked to the window and looked out at the dark yard filled with twisted metal and broken machines. They tried to stop my heart, I whispered, touching my chest. But they forgot one thing. What is that? Luther asked. I don't have a heart anymore, I said. They cut it out tonight. Now I just have a fuel pump. And I am running on pure hate. Get the vet, Luther. Cut this coil out of me. We have work to do. The veterinary surgeon had left an hour ago, taking with him the little metal coil that had been sitting in my femoral artery like a ticking time bomb. My leg was bandaged tight and the anesthesia was wearing off, leaving behind a sharp, stinging clarity. I sat in Luther's office chair watching the sun begin to rise over the scrapyard. The twisted metal shapes outside looked like the ruins of a fallen civilization, which felt appropriate because my own civilization, my home, my family had just collapsed into dust. Luther placed a mug of black coffee in front of me. The steam rose up, curling into the stale air. He didn't ask if I was okay. He knew I wasn't. He knew that the physical wound was the least of my problems. I had a hole in my chest where my heart used to be, and it was filled with the cold ash of betrayal. We have enough to bury them, Ike Luther said, leaning against his desk. The medical records, the financial trails, the DNA test. One call to the district attorney and they are done. Gavin goes down for attempted murder. Vivian goes down as an accomplice. We can have them in cuffs by lunchtime. I took a sip of the coffee. It was bitter and hot, just the way I liked it. I shook my head slowly. No cops. I said, my voice rough with fatigue. Not yet. Luther frowned. Ike, don't be stubborn. This isn't a job site dispute. This is life and death. They tried to kill you. They are expecting a baby that is an abomination of your family tree. Let the law handle it. The law is too slow, I said, staring into the black liquid in my mug. The law is clinical. The law will give them a trial. It will give them a chance to speak, to explain, to lie. It will give them 3 meals a day and a roof over their heads. I looked up at Luther. I don't want them punished, I said. I want them erased. I want to take away the one thing that matters to them more than my life. I want to take away their future. I want to take away their name. And most of all, I want to take away their money. I turned to the computer on Luther's desk. It was an old machine, but it was powerful. Luther used it to skip trace debtors and find people who didn't want to be found. I need access to the banking system, I said. Luther moved aside, giving me the chair. You going to freeze the accounts? No, I said, cracking my knuckles. I am going to drain them. I logged into the online banking portal. But I didn't use my standard login. I used a sequence of keystrokes I hadn't touched since 1998. Back then, Chicago was a different city. It was wilder, rougher. To do business, you had to have contingency plans. I had set up a ghost account, a shell company registered in Panama that didn't technically exist on any American ledger. It was my doomsday fund, my escape hatch. I pulled up the joint account I shared with Vivian. The numbers on the screen were staggering. $2.5 million in liquid cash. This was our operating capital. The money for the bills, the staff, the vacations, the jewelry. It was the money Vivian used to buy her affection and hide her insecurities. I looked at the transaction history. I saw the charges. Neiman Marcus, $4,000. Cartier, $12,000. Dr. Evans' private practice, $25,000. She had used my own money to pay the man who cut me open. My finger hovered over the enter key. If I did this, there was no going back. This was theft, technically. But you can't steal what is yours, and you can't steal from people who are already dead to you. I typed in the transfer amount, every single penny. $2,482,000.50. I routed it not to my ghost account, but to the Jeffries Foundation, the charity Gavin wanted to hijack, the charity that helped young men from the hood get an education. I hit enter. Processing. Approved. The balance on the screen dropped to 0. I sat back and let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Vivian's lifeline was cut. When she tried to buy her morning latte or pay the florist for the funeral wreath she was planning for me, her card was going to decline. The humiliation would be the first strike. But that was just the jab. Now I needed the hook. I turned to Luther. "Give me a burner phone." He opened a drawer and tossed me a cheap plastic prepaid phone. "I need you to spoof the number," I said. "Make it look like it is coming from a restricted line, the kind bad men use." Luther tapped a few keys on his keyboard. "Done." "Who are we calling?" "We aren't calling," I said. "We are texting." Gavin hates talking on the phone. He prefers to read his bad news. I held the phone in my hand. I imagined Gavin right now. He was probably at the house pacing the floor wondering where I had gone. He was probably terrified that I had gone to the police. But he was also greedy. Greed was his compass. It pointed him north even when the ship was sinking. I needed to feed that greed. I needed to make him believe that me running away wasn't an escape but a heist. I typed the message slowly, making sure every word was calculated to trigger his paranoia. "Gavin, you don't know me, but I know you. I am the silent partner. The old man isn't crazy, he just moved the big pile. 10 million USD transferred to Cayman Holdings this morning. He put the access code on a microdot inside his upper left molar denture. Find the teeth, find the money. Don't let the wife know. She talks too much." I read it back. It was absurd. It was something out of a bad spy movie. But Gavin wasn't a smart man. He was a desperate man living in a movie of his own making. He believed in shortcuts. He believed in secrets. And most of all, he believed that everyone was as deceitful as he was. "Why the dentures?" Luther asked, reading over my shoulder. "That is Twisted Ike. Because I want them to look at me," I said, my voice cold. "If they find me, or if they think they find me, I want them to be looking at my teeth, not my eyes. I want to dehumanize myself in their eyes so completely that they stop seeing a father and start seeing an ATM." And the part about not telling the wife, Luther asked. "Divide and conquer," I said. "Gavin needs 5 million for the Russians. The text says there is 10 million. If he thinks he can get it all for himself, he will cut Vivian out. He won't tell her about the text. He will start acting strange. He will start hunting me alone. And Vivian will see him pulling away. She will think he is cutting a deal without her." I hit send. The message flew through the digital ether, seeking out the phone of the man who was sleeping with my wife. "Now we wait," I said, putting the phone down. At the house, the chaos would be starting. I imagined Gavin's phone buzzing in his pocket. I imagined him pulling it out expecting a threat from the Russians or a text from a mistress. I imagined his eyes widening as he read the words. $10 million. He would look at Vivian. She would be crying or drinking or pacing. He would slide the phone back into his pocket. He wouldn't say a word. He would go to the bathroom. He would check the bank accounts on his phone to see if I really had moved money. And when he saw the joint account was empty, showing 0 balance, he would panic. But then he would remember the text. He moved the big pile. He would think I had drained the joint account as part of the move to the Caymans. The lie would become truth in his mind. He would need to find me, not to kill me anymore, but to extract my teeth. It was grotesque, it was barbaric, and it was exactly what he deserved. "Luther," I said, standing up. The pain in my leg was a dull throb now, a background noise to the symphony of destruction I was composing. "We have 24 hours until the party. I need a suit, a white suit, the kind I used to wear in the 80s when I owned this town, and I need you to find the Russians. You are really going to buy the debt, Luther asked. I am, I said. I want the paper. I want to be the one holding the leash. I walked to the dirty mirror in the corner of the office. I looked at my reflection. My eyes were bloodshot. My face was unshaven. My gray hair was messy. I looked like a homeless man. But beneath the grime, I saw the shark. Vivian wanted a new life. Gavin wanted a fortune. I was going to give them both exactly what they wanted. I was going to give Vivian a funeral, not mine, but the funeral of her social standing, her reputation, and her freedom. And I was going to give Gavin his fortune, a fortune of debt that would crush him into the pavement. Get the car, Luther, I said, turning away from the mirror. We have a surprise party to plan, and I need to make sure I look my best when I rise from the grave. I sat in the back room of the salvage yard watching the monitors that Luther had set up. We had tapped into the smart home security system of my estate. The same system Gavin had bragged about upgrading last month was now the window through which I watched his world collapse. It was pathetic, and it was terrifying. On the grainy black and white screen, I saw the living room of the house I had built. It looked like a war zone. Furniture was overturned. The expensive vases Vivian collected were shattered on the floor. And in the center of the chaos was Gavin. He was pacing back and forth like a caged tiger, his shirt untucked, his hair wild. He was holding his phone in one hand and my stolen gun in the other. He had received my text message, the message about the $10 million in the Cayman Islands, the message about the microdot in my dentures. And just as I had predicted, it had broken his brain. Vivian was sitting on the sofa, sobbing into her hands. She looked small and broken. The arrogance she had displayed in the hospital room was gone, replaced by the raw terror of a woman who realizes she has tethered herself to a madman. "Where is he?" Gavin screamed, kicking the coffee table. It flipped over, crashing into the wall. "Don't lie to me, Vivian. I know you moved him. I know you helped him get out." "I didn't," Vivian wailed, looking up at him with tear-streaked makeup. "I swear, Gavin. I don't know where he is. I thought he was in the room. I thought the drugs had worked." "Liar," Gavin roared. He marched over to her and shoved the phone in her face. "Read this. Read it. My contact says he moved $10 million this morning. 10 million. That is double what we thought he had. And he moved it to a ghost account. You are the only one who knows his passwords, Vivian. You are the only one who could have authorized that transfer." I watched Vivian squint at the screen. I saw the confusion on her face. She checked her own phone frantically, probably logging into our joint account. I saw her face go pale when she realized the balance was zero. "It is gone," she whispered. "The money is gone." "Yeah, it is gone," Gavin spat. "Because you took it. You cut a side deal, didn't you? You realized the ship was sinking, so you grabbed the cash and you helped the old man escape. Where are you meeting him, Vivian? Are you planning to run away together? Are you going to leave me here to deal with the Russians?" "No, Gavin, please," Vivian cried, standing up and reaching for him. "I didn't take it. I swear. If the money is gone, he must have moved it. He must be awake." "He is not awake," Gavin screamed. "He is a vegetable. You told me he was a vegetable. Vegetables don't transfer $10 million. You did this. You are trying to screw me over." He raised his hand and struck her. It was a backhanded slap, hard and brutal. Vivian spun around and fell back onto the sofa. She held her cheek, staring at him in shock. In 20 years of marriage, I had never raised a hand to her. I had neglected her, perhaps. I had worked too much. But I had never hurt her. Now the man she had chosen over me was beating her in her own living room. I felt a surge of cold fury watching the screen, but I didn't look away. I needed to see this. I needed to remember this. Suddenly, Kendra ran into the room. She must have heard the screaming. She was still wearing her silk robe, clutching it tight around her body. She saw her mother on the couch, holding her face. She saw her husband standing over her with a gun. Mom, Kendra gasped. She looked at Gavin, and for the first time, I saw real fear in her eyes. Not the selfish fear from before, but the primal fear of a prey animal facing a predator. "What did you do?" Kendra screamed at Gavin. "Shut up," Gavin growled, turning the gun toward her. "Go back to your room, Kendra. This doesn't concern you. You hit her." Kendra yelled, her voice hysterical. "You hit my mother. You are crazy. I am calling the police." She reached into her pocket and pulled out her cell phone. "No," Gavin shouted. He lunged at her. He wasn't fast enough to stop her from dialing, but he was fast enough to grab her wrist. He twisted it violently. Kendra screamed, dropping the phone. Gavin stomped on it. He crushed it under his heel, grinding the glass into the carpet. "No police," he hissed, grabbing Kendra by the hair and dragging her over to the sofa next to Vivian. "We are a family, remember. We stick together. If you call the cops, we all go to jail. Your mother for poisoning him, me for the fraud, and you for being the dutiful little daughter who knew everything and did nothing." Kendra sobbed, huddled against her mother. Vivian wrapped her arms around her daughter, rocking her back and forth. Two women trapped in a nightmare of their own making, held hostage by a man who was rapidly losing his grip on reality. "We need to find him," Gavin muttered, pacing again. "We need to find him and get those teeth. The money is in the teeth." He was obsessed. The lie had taken root deep in his desperate mind. Suddenly, the large flat-screen television on the wall flickered to life. I had Luther override the signal. We broadcasted directly to the smart TV in the living room. Gavin froze. He stared at the screen. Vivian and Kendra looked up, their eyes wide. The screen was black for a moment. Then a logo appeared. The logo of the Jeffries Foundation. And then the camera cut to a live feed. It was me. I was sitting in a high-backed leather chair in a studio Luther had set up. I was wearing a pristine white suit. My hair was combed back. I was shaved. I looked like the Isaiah Jeffries of 20 years ago. The Titan. The King. I looked straight into the camera lens, knowing that I was looking straight into their souls. "Good evening," I said, my voice booming through the surround sound speakers of the living room. Gavin took a step back. He lowered the gun. His mouth fell open. He is alive," he whispered. I didn't speak to them directly. I spoke to the audience of the live stream. I had broadcast this on Facebook, on YouTube, and sent the link to every board member, every news outlet, and every business partner in Chicago. "My name is Isaiah Jeffries." I continued, my voice steady and commanding. "Rumors of my demise have been greatly exaggerated. I recently underwent a medical procedure, but thanks to the miracles of modern science and a will of iron, I am fully recovered." I leaned forward, steepling my fingers. "However, a man of my age starts to think about legacy. He starts to think about who will carry the torch when he is gone. There has been much speculation about the future of the Jeffries Foundation and my personal estate." I paused, letting the weight of the words settle. Gavin was staring at the screen, mesmerized. He looked like a starving dog watching a steak. "Tomorrow is my 73rd birthday," I said. I had planned a quiet celebration, but given the circumstances, I have decided to make it a public event. Tomorrow night at 7 o'clock, I will be hosting a gala at the Grand Ballroom of the Palmer House Hotel. I smiled. It was a cold smile, a smile that promised consequences. "At this event, I will make a special announcement. I will be naming my sole beneficiary. One person will inherit control of the foundation, the estate, and the assets, including the liquid capital I have recently consolidated." I saw Gavin's eyes widen. Consolidated. He took that as confirmation of the Cayman transfer. "To my family," I said, looking directly into the lens. "To my loving wife, Vivian. To my devoted daughter, Kendra. And to my son-in-law, Gavin. I expect you there. We have much to discuss, and I have a special gift for each of you." The screen went black. The silence in the living room was deafening. "He is alive," Vivian whispered. She sounded relieved and terrified at the same time. "He is mocking us," Gavin said. He was shaking. He didn't turn the money over to the cops. He didn't call the police. "Why?" Vivian asked. "Why didn't he turn us in? He knows Gavin. He must know." "Because he wants to play games," Gavin said, his eyes narrowing. "He thinks he has won. He thinks he can dangle the money in front of us and watch us jump." Gavin turned to look at the two women. The fear in his eyes was being replaced by a new, dangerous resolve. "He is naming a sole beneficiary," he muttered. "One person." He looked at Vivian. Then he looked at Kendra. "It could be me," he said, mostly to himself. "Maybe he doesn't know everything. Maybe he thinks I am still the loyal son-in-law. Or maybe he wants to make a deal. He wants to humiliate us," Vivian said, shaking her head. "It is a trap, Gavin. We can't go. We have to run. We have to leave the country tonight." And go where Gavin snapped. "We have no money, Vivian. You saw the account. It is zero. We have no cards, no cash. And if we run, we look guilty. If we run, the police will find us in 24 hours. So, what do we do?" Kendra asked, her voice barely a whisper. "We go," Gavin said, straightening his jacket. "We go to the party. We play the part of the happy family one last time." "But he knows," Vivian cried. "It doesn't matter what he knows," Gavin said, checking the clip in the gun. "He hasn't gone to the police. That means he wants something. Maybe he wants to cut a deal, or maybe he is just an arrogant old man who wants an audience. He walked over to the mirror in the hallway and looked at himself. He smoothed his hair. He tucked the gun into the back of his waistband. "We have 24 hours, Gavin said. If the money is in the Caymans, the access codes are still on him." He said the molar right, the tooth. He turned back to them with a look of pure insanity. "We go to the party. We get him alone. We get the tooth. And then we finish what we started." "But the Russians," Vivian whispered. "The deadline is Friday." "Exactly," Gavin said. "The party is Thursday night. We have one night to win it all back." He looked at Kendra and Vivian. "Get dressed," he ordered. "Put on your best clothes. Put on your jewelry. We are going to a birthday party, and we are going to smile until our faces crack." I turned off the monitor in the safe house. I sat back in the chair. They took the bait. I knew they would. Desperation creates a tunnel vision that blinds you to the cliff edge. They thought they still had a chance. They thought they were walking into a negotiation. They didn't know they were walking into an execution. Luther walked in carrying a garment bag. "Your suit is ready, Ike," he said. I stood up. My leg throbbed, but the pain felt distant now. I looked at the black screen where my family had been. "Tomorrow," I said, taking the suit, "we end it." I wasn't just throwing a party. I was hosting a trial. A public trial where the evidence would be projected on a 30-foot screen and the jury would be the entire city of Chicago. And the sentence would be absolute ruin. The grand ballroom of the Palmer House Hotel was a cathedral of gold leaf and velvet. It was the kind of place where Chicago's elite came to congratulate themselves on being rich. Crystal chandeliers the size of small cars hung from the frescoed ceiling, casting a warm, expensive glow over the 300 guests who had gathered for my birthday. The air smelled of lobster bisque, expensive perfume, and hypocrisy. I stood backstage in the wings watching the room fill up on a monitor. I was wearing the white suit. It was a bespoke Italian-cut silk and wool blend that Luther had picked up for me that morning. It was stark, pristine, and aggressive. In a sea of black tuxedos and dark evening gowns, I would shine like a beacon. I would look like a ghost returning from the grave to haunt the living. Luther stood beside me, adjusting his earpiece. He looked uncomfortable in his rented tux, but his eyes were scanning the crowd with the precision of a sniper. "Table 9 is set," he murmured, leaning close to my ear. "Your special guests have arrived." I looked at the monitor. Table 9 was positioned strategically near the front right in the line of sight of the podium. Seated there were 4 men. They didn't look like the other guests. They wore suits that were cut a little too wide across the shoulders. They didn't smile. They didn't mingle. They sat with a stillness that was unnatural. In the center was Sergei Volkov. I recognized him from the dossier Luther had compiled. He was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with a shaved head and eyes that looked like chips of ice. He wasn't drinking the champagne the waiters were passing around. He was drinking water. He was on the clock. "They are waiting for their money," I said, adjusting my cufflinks. "They are waiting for blood," Luther corrected. "If Gavin doesn't pay up tonight, they are going to drag him out through the kitchen and put him in a trunk." "Good," I said. "Let them watch." Then I saw them. The doors at the far end of the ballroom opened and my family walked in. They were putting on the performance of a lifetime. Gavin led the way. He was wearing a midnight blue tuxedo, his hair slicked back. He was smiling, but it was a tight, manic smile that didn't reach his eyes. He was gripping Vivian's arm, steering her like a prop. Vivian looked stunning and tragic. She wore a long emerald green gown that barely concealed the tremors in her hands. She was smiling too, nodding at people, waving to friends, but her eyes were darting around the room frantically. She was looking for me. She was looking for the police. She was looking for a way out. And trailing behind them was Kendra. My poor, broken Kendra. She wore a pale pink dress that washed her out, making her look like a phantom. She kept her head down, avoiding eye contact. She looked like she was walking to the gallows. The crowd parted for them. People whispered. People pointed. Everyone knew the rumors. Everyone knew I had been sick. Everyone was wondering why the old lion had suddenly roared back to life. I watched Gavin stop a waiter and grab a glass of scotch. He downed it in one gulp. He needed the liquid courage. He scanned the room, his eyes hungry. He wasn't looking for friends. He was looking for me. He was looking for my teeth. He believed the lie. He believed the $10 million was real and that he was just one dental extraction away from freedom. "It is showtime," Luther said. I took a deep breath. I pushed down the physical pain in my leg. I pushed down the heartache. I pulled up the mask of the patriarch. I walked out onto the stage. The lights hit me. Blind white heat. For a second, the room was noisy. Then someone saw me. Then someone else. A ripple of silence spread through the ballroom, moving from the front tables to the back until the only sound was the hum of the air conditioning. I stood there in the center of the spotlight, leaning casually on an ivory-handled cane. I didn't look frail. I didn't look like a man recovering from surgery. I looked like I owned the building. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said into the microphone, my voice deep and steady. "Thank you for coming." Thunderous applause broke out. It was a wave of sound that washed over me. I saw the board members clapping enthusiastically. I saw the social climbers craning their necks. And I saw my family. They were standing near the front, frozen. Gavin's jaw had dropped. He was staring at me as if he was seeing a resurrection. Vivian had a hand over her mouth. Kendra was crying silently. I waited for the applause to die down. I looked directly at Gavin. I smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile a wolf gives to a lost lamb. I stepped down from the stage and walked toward them. The crowd parted, creating a path. I walked slowly, my cane tapping a rhythmic beat on the parquet floor. Tap, tap, tap. I reached them. Daddy, Kendra whispered. I ignored her. I turned to Gavin. I extended my hand. "Gavin," I said loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. "You look terrible, son. Have you not been sleeping?" Gavin stared at my hand. He hesitated. Then he shook it. His palm was sweating profusely. His grip was weak. "We were worried about you, Ike," he stammered. "You thought I was resting," I finished for him. And I was, but a man can only rest for so long before he has to get back to business. "Right." I squeezed his hand. I squeezed it hard. I felt his knuckles grind together. He winced, but he didn't pull away. He couldn't. Not in front of the cameras. I leaned in close to his ear. "Did you get my text?" I whispered. Gavin's eyes widened. He nodded slightly. "Good," I whispered back. "Then you know what is at stake tonight." I pulled away and turned to Vivian. She looked like she was about to faint. "Vivian, my love," I said. "You look beautiful. Green is definitely your color. It reminds me of money." She flinched as if I had slapped her. "Ike, please," she hissed under her breath. "What are you doing?" "I am celebrating," I said, raising my voice again. "I am celebrating family." I put my arm around her waist. It felt rigid. I turned her toward the room. "Everyone," I boomed. "I want you to meet the people who have stood by my side. My rock. My support system. Without their special care, I wouldn't be standing here today." The crowd applauded again. Vivian forced a smile that looked like a grimace of pain. I saw Gavin's eyes drift. He wasn't looking at me anymore. He was looking past me. He was looking at table 9. He had seen them. I saw the color drain from his face. He locked eyes with Sergei. Sergei didn't blink. He just raised his glass of water in a silent toast. Gavin began to tremble. I could feel the vibration of it in the air. He realized that the sharks were in the pool. He looked back at me. His eyes were pleading. He thought I didn't know who those men were. He thought I had just invited some business associates. He wanted to tell me. He wanted to scream for help, but he couldn't because he remembered the text. $10 million. If he caused a scene, if he got arrested, he would lose the money. He had to play the game. He had to survive the night. I patted him on the shoulder. "Relax, Gavin," I said softly. "Everything is going to be taken care of tonight. I promise." He nodded, swallowing hard. He thought I meant I was going to pay them off. He thought I was his savior. I walked back up to the stage. I adjusted the microphone. "Please take your seats, everyone," I said. "Dinner will be served shortly. But first we have some business to attend to." The room went quiet again. The waiters stopped moving. I looked out at the sea of faces. I looked at the table where my wife and children sat. They looked like prisoners awaiting a verdict. I have spent 40 years building this company I began. I have built skyscrapers. I have built bridges. I have built a reputation for being a hard man, but a fair man. I paused. But a man cannot build forever. There comes a time when the tools must be laid down. There comes a time when the torch must be passed. I saw Gavin lean forward in his chair. He was licking his lips. This was it. This was the moment he had killed for. "I have made a decision," I announced. A decision about the future of my estate and the Jeffries Foundation. I reached into the inside pocket of my white suit. I pulled out a thick envelope. It was sealed with red wax. Gavin's eyes were glued to that envelope. He thought it was the deed. He thought it was the transfer of power. Tonight, I continued, I will name my sole beneficiary, the person who will inherit everything, the person who has proven themselves worthy of the Jeffries name. I looked directly at Gavin. I held his gaze. This person has shown initiative. They have shown that they are willing to do whatever it takes to secure their future. They have shown ambition. Gavin sat back in his chair. A smile broke across his face. It was a smile of pure relief and triumph. He thought I was talking about him. He thought that his ruthlessness, his willingness to forge and poison and steal was exactly what I respected. He thought I was rewarding him for being a killer, just like he imagined I was. He looked at Sergei at table 9 and gave a tiny, arrogant nod, as if to say, wait a minute, boys, I have got the money. I watched him gloat. I watched him preen. I let the moment hang in the air. I let him taste the victory. I let him feel the weight of the crown on his head, because the higher he climbed, the further he would fall. And when he hit the ground, I wanted to hear every bone in his body break. I tapped the envelope against the podium. But before I opened this, I said, I want to share a little story, a story about loyalty, and a story about a very special medical procedure. Gavin's smile faltered. Vivian froze. I motioned to the back of the room. Luther hit the lights. The ballroom plunged into darkness. A massive screen descended behind me, and the nightmare began. The ballroom plunged into darkness, but it wasn't the comforting darkness of sleep. It was the heavy, suffocating darkness of a theater before a horror movie begins. The only light came from the massive screen that descended from the ceiling behind me. It hummed with electricity, a low static buzz that seemed to vibrate in the silence. I stepped back into the shadows of the stage. I didn't want to block the view. I wanted to be a spectator now. I had written the script, I had built the set, and now it was time for the actors to deliver their final performance. The screen flickered to life. It wasn't a professional video. It was raw, grainy surveillance footage from the hidden cameras inside my estate. The date stamp in the corner read Tuesday, 2:15 a.m. The image showed my library. The mahogany shelves were dark, but the desk lamp cast a pool of yellow light. Two figures were arguing. Their voices were crystal clear, amplified by the ballroom's state-of-the-art sound system. I need $5 million by Friday. Gavin's voice boomed through the room. It was shrill, desperate. Or, they will kill me, Vivian. The Russians don't play games. A collective gasp rippled through the audience. 300 heads turned to look at Gavin, who was standing near the front of the stage. He looked like he had been turned to stone. His face was illuminated by the ghostly blue light of the screen displaying his own confession. The video cut to a new scene, the kitchen. Wednesday morning. Vivian was standing at the island. She was wearing her silk robe, the one she had worn when she betrayed me. In her hand was a small packet of pink powder. I watched as the woman on the screen poured the powder into a glass of orange juice. I watched her stir it. I watched the methodical, cold way she prepared the weapon that was meant to end my life. He didn't drink enough last night, Vivian's recorded voice said. We have to increase the dose. If he doesn't have a stroke by tomorrow, we are finished. On the screen, Gavin walked into the frame. He grabbed the glass. Just make sure he drinks it, he said. Force it down his throat if you have to. We need that signature. The room was absolutely silent now. No one was eating. No one was breathing. The waiters stood frozen with trays of champagne. The socialites in their diamonds stared in horror. This wasn't gossip. This wasn't a rumor. This was attempted murder played out in high definition. I looked at Vivian. She was shaking her head violently, her hands covering her ears as if she could block out the truth. She looked around seeking an exit, but she was hemmed in by the crowd. She was trapped in the center of the nightmare she had created. But I wasn't done. The physical threat was only the first layer. I had to expose the rot at the core. The screen went black for a second. Then a document appeared. It was a medical record, a pregnancy test. At first there was confusion. People squinted at the screen, trying to understand why I was showing them a lab report. Then the camera zoomed in. Patient name, Vivian Jeffries. Status pregnant, 16 weeks. A murmur ran through the crowd. People were doing the math. I was 72 years old. I had been recovering from surgery. The idea of me fathering a child was unlikely but possible. Then came the second document. The one Luther had retrieved from the private server of the paternity clinic. It was a DNA compatibility analysis, the science of truth, the undeniable biological fact that strips away all lies. The names appeared in bold black letters against the white background. Mother Vivian Jeffries, alleged father Gavin Miller, probability of paternity 99.9%. The reaction was instantaneous. It wasn't a gasp. It was a shockwave, a sound of pure revulsion that started in the front row and exploded backward. People stood up, chairs scraped against the floor. It was the sound of a society realizing they were standing in the presence of something taboo, something deeply unclean. I looked at Kendra. She was staring at the screen. Her eyes were wide, unblinking. Her mouth was slightly open. She looked like a doll that had been broken. She read the names. She read them again. Gavin, Vivian, her husband, her mother, the two people she had tried to protect, the two people she had betrayed her father for. They weren't just thieves. They were lovers. They were building a new family on the corpse of her marriage. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. Her brain simply couldn't process the magnitude of the trauma. Her system shut down. I watched her sway. Her knees buckled. She collapsed sideways, hitting the floor with a dull thud. Kendra Vivian shrieked. It was a piercing sound that cut through the noise of the crowd. Vivian fell to her knees beside her daughter. She tried to touch her, but the people around her recoiled. The guests at the nearby tables stepped back, pulling their skirts and jackets away as if Vivian was contagious, as if her touch would transmit the stain of her sin. "Don't touch her," someone yelled. It was Mrs. Higgins, the head of the charity board. She looked at Vivian with absolute disgust. "You monster." I walked back into the spotlight. The video faded, but the image of the DNA test remained burned onto the screen, a backdrop for my judgment. I looked down at the chaos. "I told you," I said into the microphone, my voice calm and cold. "I told you I would name my sole beneficiary tonight." I pointed to the screen. "There is no beneficiary. There is no legacy for you. Because you are not a family. You are a cancer." Gavin hadn't moved. He was staring at the screen, his eyes vacant. The lie about the $10 million, the microdot in the tooth, it had all evaporated. He realized there was no money, there was no escape. He had walked into the lion's den wearing a meat suit. He looked around wildly. He looked at me. "Ike," he stammered, his voice barely audible over the jeers of the crowd. "Ike, please. It is a mistake. It is a fake." I didn't answer him. I just looked toward table 9. The 4-men at table 9 stood up in unison. They moved with a synchronized grace that was terrifying to behold. They weren't looking at the screen. They weren't looking at the fainting woman. They were looking at Gavin. Sergei Volkov. The man in the center buttoned his jacket. He smoothed his tie. He looked at me and gave a small, respectful nod, acknowledging the transaction. I had bought the debt. I had given him the location. Now he was here to collect the collateral. Sergei smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a butcher eyeing a side of beef. Gavin followed my gaze. He saw them. He saw the men he owed $5 million to standing between him and the exit. He saw the cold promise of violence in their eyes. He took a step back, bumping into a waiter. A tray of glasses crashed to the floor, shattering into 1,000 pieces. "No," Gavin whispered. "No, no, no." He turned to run. He turned. He pushed a guest out of the way, scrambling toward the kitchen doors. But the men from table 9 were faster. They didn't run. They glided. 2 of them moved to intercept him, cutting off his path with professional efficiency. Gavin froze. He was trapped. Behind him was the stage where I stood with the evidence of his crimes. In front of him were the killers he had tried to swindle. Beside him lay his wife and mother-in-law, broken by the truth. He looked at me one last time. His eyes were wet with tears. "Help me, Ike," he mouthed. "Please." I looked at him. I looked at the man who had poisoned me, the man who had beaten my wife, the man who had impregnated my wife while married to my daughter. I raised the microphone to my lips. "I believe this party is over," I said. "Security guard the exits until the police arrive for the women. As for Mr. Miller," I paused, looking at Sergei. "I believe he has a prior engagement." Sergei stepped forward. He placed a heavy hand on Gavin's shoulder. It looked like a friendly gesture to the uninitiated, but I saw Gavin's knees buckle under the pressure. "We have a car waiting." Mr. Miller, Sergei said, his voice low and smooth. We have much to discuss regarding your accounting errors. Gavin tried to scream, but one of the other men moved close, pressing something into his side. A knife, maybe. Or a gun. The scream died in his throat, turning into a pathetic whimper. They began to walk him out, not through the main doors, but through the side exit leading to the loading dock. Gavin stumbled, his legs useless. They practically carried him, his feet dragging on the expensive carpet. He looked back at me, his eyes wide with terror, pleading for a mercy that didn't exist. I watched them go. I watched my son-in-law being dragged into the darkness. I knew I would never see him again. I knew the police would never find him. He was going to a place where debts are paid in flesh and bone. I looked down at Vivian. She was weeping over Kendra's unconscious body, rocking back and forth. The police sirens were already wailing in the distance, approaching the hotel. I stood alone on the stage. The white suit was spotless. The cane was steady. I had torn it all down. The house, the family, the legacy. It was a demolition job, and it was perfect. I turned my back on them and walked into the wings. The show was over. The audience could go home. But I had one more stop to make. I had a flight to catch. And a new life to begin. The sirens were not a warning anymore. They were a verdict. The blue and red lights flashed against the high windows of the ballroom, cutting through the crystal chandeliers and painting the faces of the horrified guests in the colors of the law. The doors swung open with a violence that made the floor shake. It wasn't just a patrol unit, it was a swarm. Uniformed officers, detectives in cheap suits, and paramedics pushing a gurney. They flowed into the room like water filling a sinking ship. I stood on the stage, my hands resting on the ivory handle of my cane, watching the inevitable collide with the unthinkable. They didn't go for me. They went straight to the center of the room where my wife was kneeling beside her unconscious daughter. Vivian Jeffries, a voice boomed. It was Detective Vance, a man I had known for 20 years, a man who had investigated job site thefts for me back in the day. He didn't look friendly tonight. He looked tired of cleaning up the messes of rich people. Vivian looked up. Her mascara was running down her face in black rivers, making her look like a weeping gargoyle. Vivian Jeffries, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder insurance fraud and the attempted poisoning of Isaiah Jeffries. Vivian screamed. It was a raw, animalistic sound of denial. No, she shrieked, scrambling backward on her knees, her silk dress tearing under the heel of her shoe. You can't arrest me. I am the victim here. My husband, he is the one doing this. He is crazy. He has dementia. Look at him. She pointed a trembling finger at me. Vance didn't even look at me. He signaled to his officers. Get her up. 2 officers grabbed Vivian by the arms, hauling her to her feet. She kicked and thrashed, her dignity completely gone, and then the side doors opened again, and the second act of my tragedy walked in. It was Dr. Evans. He wasn't wearing his white coat. He was wearing handcuffs. He was flanked by 2 burly officers who looked like they had dragged him out of bed. He looked small. He looked pathetic. The arrogance of the surgeon god was gone, replaced by the terror of a man who knows he has lost his medical license and his freedom in a single stroke. Vivian saw him and she froze. The sight of her co-conspirator in chains broke something inside her. Evans, she whispered. He gave them everything. Vivian Evans spat out, his voice cracking. He gave them the emails, the bank transfers, the coil logs. They have it all. Vivian turned to me. Her eyes were wild, darting back and forth between the police and the husband she had tried to kill. Ike, she pleaded. Ike, tell them. Tell them it was a mistake. I walked down the steps of the stage. The crowd parted for me again, but this time they didn't applaud. They stared in silent awe. I walked until I was standing right in front of her. A mistake, I repeated, my voice low and calm. Which part was a mistake, Vivian? The poison in my orange juice? The forged signature on the mortgage? Or the child you are carrying? Vivian's face crumpled. She realized she had no cards left to play, no leverage, no lies, except one. She threw herself toward me, straining against the grip of the officers. I did it for you, she wailed. Her voice echoed off the vaulted ceiling, desperate and delusional. I did it for us, Ike. I stared at her. For us. Yes, she sobbed, the tears flowing freely now. I wanted to give you a son. I knew you wanted an heir. I knew you were disappointed that we only had Kendra. I wanted to give you a boy to carry on your name. That is why I did it. I got confused. I made bad choices. But it was all out of love, Ike. I swear. It is your son. The room went deadly silent. Even the police officers seemed to pause, waiting for my reaction. She was claiming the baby was mine. She was claiming that her affair with my son-in-law was actually a twisted act of love for me. It was the most beautiful and disgusting lie I had ever heard. I stepped closer. I leaned in so that only she and the officers could hear me clearly. "You really are a piece of work, Vivian," I said softly. "You almost believe it, don't you? You have told yourself this lie so many times that it has become your truth." "It is the truth," she cried, nodding frantically. "It is your baby." I shook my head slowly. "You forgot one thing, Vivian. One very small, very important detail." What she whispered, her eyes wide. "I had a vasectomy in 1985, I said." Vivian blinked. "What?" 1985, I repeated. 6 months after Kendra was born. I decided one child was enough. I decided I didn't want to bring any more children into a world where I had to fight so hard just to survive. I had the procedure done at a clinic on the South Side. I never told you. I never told anyone, because back then it was my business. Vivian's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Her brain was trying to process the timeline, trying to find a loophole. "But the surgery last week," she stammered. "The surgery last week was a show," I said, my voice turning to steel. "I knew what you were planning, Vivian. I knew about the coil. I knew about the poison." Her face went pale white. You knew." "From the very beginning," I said. I looked over at Luther, who was standing by the stage, arms crossed, looking like the angel of death. "Luther has had your phone cloned for 3 months, I explained. I read every text between you and Gavin. I heard every voicemail. I knew about the affair before you even missed your first period." Vivian sagged in the officer's grip. Her legs gave out. "So when you suggested the vasectomy," I said, leaning down to look her in the eye, I agreed. "Because I wanted to see how far you would go. I wanted to see if you would actually let that Butcher Evans cut me open. I wanted to see if you would actually put the poison in my glass." "You let me do it," she whispered, horrified. "You let me poison you." "I never drank it, Vivian," I said. "The envelope Dr. Evans gave you. The one with the dosage plan. I took it out of your purse while you were sleeping on Tuesday night. I replaced the powder with crushed vitamins and red food coloring, the real poison, the real evidence. I handed it to Detective Vance on Tuesday morning in a Ziploc bag." Vivian looked at Vance. The detective nodded slowly, reaching into his pocket and pulling out an evidence bag containing the familiar white envelope. "We analyzed it," Mrs. Jeffries Vance said, his voice flat. "A lethal cocktail of digitalis and psychotropics, enough to stop an elephant's heart, or make an old man look like he died of natural causes." Vivian let out a sound that wasn't human. It was the sound of a soul shattering. "You set me up," she screamed. "You set me up." "I didn't set you up," I said, straightening my back and smoothing my white suit. "I just gave you enough rope. You and Gavin did the rest. You tied the noose around your own necks. I just kicked away the chair." "Why?" she sobbed. "Why didn't you just divorce me? Why did you have to destroy us?" "Because you broke the contract," I said, coldness radiating from me like a winter storm. "You didn't just cheat Vivian. You brought a viper into my house. You slept with my daughter's husband. You tried to pass off his bastard as my heir. You tried to steal my name." I looked at her stomach, the small bump hidden under the green silk. "That child is not a Jeffries," I said. "And neither are you. Not anymore." I nodded to the officers. "Take her out." "No!" Vivian screamed as they dragged her backward. "Ike, please. I am your wife. I love you. Ike." Her screams faded as they pushed her through the double doors, followed by Evans, who was weeping silently. I stood there in the center of the ballroom, surrounded by the wreckage of my life. The paramedics were loading Kendra onto a stretcher. She was still unconscious. It was better that way. When she woke up, she would be alone. She would be divorced. She would be the daughter of a felon. But she would be alive. And maybe stripped of the poison that was Gavin and Vivian, she might finally find a way to be the woman I had tried to raise. I watched them wheel her out. I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was Luther. "It is done, Ike," he said softly. I looked around the room. The guests were silent, staring at me with a mixture of fear and awe. They had come for a party. They had witnessed an execution. I walked back to the microphone one last time. I tapped it. The sound echoed through the empty hall. "My name is Isaiah Jeffries." I said, my voice weary but unbroken. "I built this city. I built this family. And tonight I learned that sometimes to save the foundation you have to demolish the house." I looked at the camera at the red light that was still blinking, broadcasting my pain to the world. "Thank you for coming," I said. "Drive safe." I turned and walked off the stage. I didn't look back. I didn't look at the empty tables or the shattered glass. I walked straight to the exit where Luther was holding the door open. "Where to?" Ike Luther asked as we stepped out into the cool night air of Chicago. "The airport," I said. "The airport? You going somewhere warm?" I looked up at the sky. The stars were hidden behind the city lights, but I knew they were there. "Bali," I said. "I hear the beaches are quiet this time of year, and I have a lot of sleeping to do. But before we go," I said, pausing by the curb. "Yeah?" Luther asked. "Call the contractor," I said. "Which one?" "The demolition crew," I said. "Tell them to start on the house tomorrow morning." "You really going to flatten it?" Luther asked. "It is a $20 million estate, Ike. It is a crime scene," I said, opening the car door. "Tear it down, Luther. Tear it down to the dirt. And when I get back," I smiled, a real smile this time. "When I get back, we will build something new, something smaller, something solid, something that no one can ever take away from me." I got into the car. The engine started. I closed my eyes as we pulled away, leaving the sirens and the screams behind me. I was alone. I was wounded. I was 72 years old, but I was free. And for the first time in 40 years, I could finally breathe. The silence that followed the sirens was the heaviest silence I have ever known. It was not the peace of a job well done, but the stillness of a battlefield after the last shot has been fired. The guests had fled the ballroom, leaving behind their half-eaten dinners and their whispers. The police had taken Vivian away, her green silk dress ruined and her wrists bound in steel. She had screamed my name until the heavy doors cut off her voice, leaving only the echo of her betrayal. But Gavin did not get the luxury of handcuffs. I stood by the service entrance of the hotel, watching the taillights of a black sedan disappear into the Chicago night. The police were too busy processing the crime scene inside to notice that one of the perpetrators had been escorted out by a different kind of authority. Sergei Volkov and his men were efficient. They didn't make a scene. They didn't brandish weapons. They simply collected what belonged to them. Gavin had looked back at me one last time before they shoved him into the back seat. His face was a mask of pure, unadulterated terror. He knew where he was going. He knew that there would be no lawyer to argue his case, no judge to grant him bail. He was going to a basement in a part of the city that didn't appear on maps. He was going to work off a $5 million debt with his flesh. I didn't feel joy as I watched him go. I didn't feel triumph. I felt a grim finality. He had gambled with devils, and he had lost. I simply declined to pay his tab. Inside the ballroom, the cleanup began. My lawyer arrived with the paperwork to hand over the evidence to the detectives, the video footage, the medical records, the financial trails. It was a mountain of proof that would bury Vivian under the weight of the penal code. She would be charged with conspiracy to commit capital murder, insurance fraud, and grand larceny. With the DNA evidence of the affair and the pregnancy proving her motive, she would never see the outside of a prison cell again. She had wanted a life of luxury without consequences. Now she would have a life of consequences without a single luxury. And Kendra. I arranged for a private ambulance to take her from the hospital to a specialized facility in Zurich. It is a place for healing, a place for people whose minds have been shattered by trauma. She woke up the next day screaming. She screamed for her husband. She screamed for her mother. She screamed for the father she had betrayed. I did not go to see her. I could not. If I looked at her now, I would only see the cracks in the foundation. I would only see the weakness that had almost killed me. I paid for her treatment in full. I set up a trust that would ensure she never went hungry, but she would never have access to the bulk of my fortune again. She was safe, but she was no longer mine. I had cut the rod out, but the scar would remain forever. By dawn, the city was waking up. The sun rose over Lake Michigan, painting the skyline in gold and pink. It was the same skyline I had helped build. I looked at the towers of steel and glass that bore my fingerprints, and I realized I didn't recognize them anymore. This city was a graveyard of memories. Every street corner reminded me of a deal I made to buy a stroller. Every restaurant reminded me of an anniversary dinner with a woman who wanted me dead. I couldn't stay. I met Luther at the private airfield at 6 in the morning. He was standing by the steps of the Gulfstream jet holding 2 glasses and a bottle of vintage Bordeaux. "You ready to go?" "Ike," he asked. I looked back at the town car that had brought us here. I looked back at the hazy outline of the city in the distance. "I am ready," I said. We climbed aboard. The cabin was quiet and cool, smelling of leather and fresh flowers. I sank into the seat and let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for 40 years. My legs still throbbed a dull ache where the surgeon had removed the coil, but it was a healing pain. It was the pain of recovery, not the pain of dying. The engines hummed to life, a rising roar that drowned out the thoughts in my head. We taxied down the runway, picking up speed. I felt the familiar push of gravity as we lifted off, leaving the earth behind. Luther poured the wine. The dark red liquid swirled in the glass, rich and heavy. "To survival," Luther said, raising his glass. I looked at the wine. It reminded me of the blood on the windowsill. It reminded me of the poison in the orange juice. "No," I said, clinking my glass against his. "To demolition." We drank. The wine was excellent. It tasted of earth and fruit and time. I looked out the window. Chicago was shrinking below us, becoming a grid of lights and lines. I saw the neighborhood where my estate stood. I imagined the demolition crew arriving right about now. The excavators would be rolling up the driveway. The wrecking ball would be swinging. By tonight, the master bedroom where I was held prisoner would be rubble. The library where they plotted my murder would be dust. The garden where Vivian planted her lies would be dirt. I was erasing it all. I was scrubbing the slate clean. I was 72 years old. I was alone. I had no wife. I had no children I could call my own. I had lost the family I spent a lifetime building. But as the plane broke through the clouds and leveled out into the brilliant blue sky, I realized something else. I was safe. I was sitting in a comfortable chair drinking good wine with a friend who would take a bullet for me. I had my mind, I had my dignity, and I had the rest of my life. I wasn't a victim, I was a survivor. I had walked through the fire and I had come out the other side not as ash but as hardened steel. "Where to?" First, Luther asked, opening a map. "Bali," I said, closing my eyes. "I want to sit on a beach where no one knows my name. I want to listen to the ocean instead of lies. And then maybe Tokyo, or Rome, wherever the wind takes us." "And the business?" Luther asked. "The empire." "Sell it," I said without opening my eyes. "Sell it all. The buildings, the contracts, the land. Put the money in the trust. Let it build schools. Let it build hospitals. Let it build something that lasts longer than a family name." I felt a tear slide down my cheek. I didn't wipe it away. I let it fall. It was the last tear I would shed for the Jeffries family. The plane banked south, turning away from the cold wind of Illinois toward the warmth of the equator. I took another sip of wine. I was Isaiah Jeffries. I had built a kingdom and I had burned it to the ground. And now, sitting in the quiet hum of the jet at 30,000 feet, I finally found the one thing I had been searching for all my life. We spend our lives building empires thinking we are creating a legacy for our loved ones. But sometimes the wealth we accumulate becomes the very poison that infects them. I learned that loyalty cannot be bought and blood does not guarantee goodness. The people closest to you often hold the sharpest knives, waiting for your moment of weakness. True power isn't about controlling others or amassing fortune. It's about having the wisdom to see the truth, the courage to cut out the rot, and the strength to walk away with your dignity intact, even if you have to walk alone. If you enjoyed this story and you believe that betrayal should never go unpunished, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments below, would you have forgiven your daughter or would you have walked away? Just like I did, I read every single comment. Until next time, stay sharp.